council.
Madam President, we had a closed session. We discussed labor negotiations, but there's no reportable action.
All right, thank you. And on special, let's see, no acknowledgments or presentations today. Do we have someone representative from the Sheriff's Department here today? Going once, going twice. General Manager Gruber, would you contact someone from the department and see if they are planning to attend, if they're aware, because I know that it's important to us to have a report.
I would be more than happy to.
Thank you. And Director Thompson?
Yes, I attended the newcomers luncheon last week, and Sheriff Parkinson was the featured speaker, and I did speak to Commander Nix, who's the Coast commander, about coming to the meetings, and he indicated that he certainly intends to or to have representation. Because of some scheduling mix-ups, I think they hadn't been here for a while, but they will be here hopefully today still. The sheriff also did indicate that he did have interest in resuming discussions about a substation or a drop-in station in Cambria. And so I think Commander Nix will be exploring that with us at some point in time.
Thank you for that update. That would be, I'm sure, appreciated by everyone here to have someone that was actually more on duty from time to time with an office here. Thank you for that. Okay, then let's move to agenda review. And are there any additions, deletions, or any consent items to be pulled?
I just have a brief comment on the minutes for consent. When we get to it.
Oh, okay, but nothing to be pulled? Oh, okay. Fine, thank you. Then we'll move on to public comment. And here they, okay, first person today for public comment is Elizabeth Bettenhausen. Followed by Connie Gannon.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I'm Elizabeth Bettenhausen from Cambria for 13 years, almost to the day. And it's always been my pleasure to come and speak with you and to alert you to concerns that a member of the community might have. I won't bring up all the letters I wrote to you recently, which have not been responded to. I do want, though, for the sake of the audience, those of us who sit out there and those who are in the TV world, I want to read one paragraph of California law. This binds all of us in the room. And that paragraph says, the people of this state, California, do not yield their sovereignty to the agencies which serve them. The people, in delegating authority, do not give their public servants the right to decide what is good for the people to know and what is not good for them to know. The people insist on remaining informed so that they may retain control over the instruments they have created. That's in the plural, of course, because the people is not only I, but I, in the singular, cheer when I read that paragraph of state law. Madam President, I will raise the issue that you know I'm talking about a policy by this board on public comment, including questions. I will raise that issue in your bylaws, which are one of the most revised, succinct documents I have yet encountered in my 72-plus years.
Me too.
You know why I have suspicions about such succinct documents when it comes to the delegation of authority. But I want you to know, dear board members, since I cannot talk to staff, dear board members,
Just, well,
people in the back will put me on. You know what I can project.
just a moment, please.
Ooh, it has a thing that I don't know in high tech, but I'm so glad we're all high techy now in CCSG. I want to tell you face to face, dear friends, that I do not relinquish my sovereignty to elected officials. Neither do I relinquish my sovereignty as a member of this democracy to the appointees that elected officials put upon us. I maintain my sovereignty and will keep it until, or even a day after, my demise into some other world. I will have more to say today. Thank you very much. And it sounded like what the horse heard out at the emergency water.
Thank you. Connie Gannon?
Good afternoon, members of the CCSD board. This is my first time getting to speak to you. My name is Connie Gannon, and I am the Executive Director of Green Space, the Cambria Land Trust. I am here today to speak briefly about the status...
Pardon me. Excuse me. I apologize.
Thank you. I am here today to speak briefly about the status of the forest and the safety of Cambria's residents and businesses. As you know, our Monterey pine forest has experienced a dramatic die-off in the last several months, similar to declines elsewhere on the coast. The die-off is raising the fire hazard dramatically and requires urgent action by the community. I recently submitted a grant proposal to the California Fire Safe Council for funding to support the Defensible Space and Native Plant Identification Workshop. The purpose of this workshop will be to train residents and vegetation management specialists in creating fire-safe landscapes that preserve the native plants of our forest. The proposal included a public presentation by a former ecologist-botanist on the status of our Monterey pines, and also a brush removal and a pine and oak replanting component to complement the work being done under the recently submitted SRA grant to CAL FIRE. CCSD Fire Department and CAL FIRE both expressed interest in collaborating with Green Space on the workshop. They both partnered on our previous Defensible Space workshop in 2006. On Wednesday the 18th, the day before the grant was due, CCSD Fire withdrew their support for the project, claiming that the, quote, up to $3,000, quote, match I had requested from them was more than they could afford. The match was mostly salary already being paid to staff. At most, the grant would have cost CCSD a few $100s if the fire department had chosen to help defray the cost of brochures about defensible space being mailed to every household in Cambria. This workshop trains and provides FireWise certification to vegetation management professionals, a definite benefit to the fire department and to residents. I am disappointed in the fire department's response and the non-response to my follow-up email, which pointed out the in-kind nature of the match request, that it was actually for existing salary. It's hard to believe that this reaction is unrelated to the CCSD's response to Green Space's stated concerns regarding the emergency water project, concerns that include the 500-gallon-plus chlorine spill and dangerous noise levels up San Simeon Creek. It alarms us that the CCSD staff might neglect an opportunity to enhance fire safety and preparedness of its residents because of a separate issue. I ask that the board look into this matter with Manager Gruber. It is critical for all local organizations to work together to alleviate the fire threat to our community and protect our forests. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we have Jim Crescenzi, followed by Jim Webb. Did Jim Crescenzi? Oh, there he is. Thank you. Hi, Jim.
Hi. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My wife Elaine and I have lived here for 15 years. I have supported and continues to support the Cambria Emergency Water Project. It has surprised me that there is opposition from so-called environmental groups. I would think that they would simply declare a victory in the long fight to avoid a seawater desalination plant, and instead now have a facility with virtually no negative environmental impact. This facility extracts brackish water with low salinity and a small residual waste component, cleans it, and provides 1 gallon of relatively clean water back to the creek and lagoon for every 3 gallons eventually delivered to Cambria residents. Frankly, I can't imagine a more environmentally friendly facility that achieves a significant degree of water supply insurance in times of drought. It also, if it works as planned, will assure adequate water level to support the survival of various fish, including steelhead. There have been some statements, particularly by Cambria Green Space officers, that there has been no water emergency in Cambria and apparently no drought. I find this to be, frankly, preposterous. Many reputable scientists have stated that California is in a prolonged drought of historic proportions. By way of personal observations, and I've been here 15 years and I enjoy fishing, I have never seen the water so low at Santa Margarita Lake since I've lived here. It is currently filled to 18% of capacity. I can't imagine how directors of a CCSD could not have felt an obligation to prepare the community for even more severe drought conditions and therefore to construct the current facility. None of us can predict the future rainfall in our area, and continued drought is a real possibility. And of course, it could also be a flood situation. We don't know what's coming, but we need to be prepared, and I thank you for your work.
Thank you. Jim Webb?
Good afternoon, Board. My name is Jim Webb, local Cambria resident, and I'm here today to announce the upcoming election at the North Coast Advisory Council, something that some of you have had prior familiarity with. This is a year in which what we call the odd-numbered areas are up for election. There's a map of what the areas represent on the NCAC website, but in general it includes San Simeon, Park Hill, the Seacliff Estates portion of it, Lodge Hill east of Highway 1, and Lodge Hill south of Ardith and west of Pine Ridge. There are also 2 advisory positions that are up for election or appointment this year, one representing business and the other representing the Hispanic community. There'll be an ad in the paper this coming week telling you all about it. The election is actually May 5th. Polls will be open between 10 and 6. But to get your name in the hat, you need to fill out a condition of service form, which is available on the website for NCAC. You can print one out, submit it to Bruce Fosdyke, who's the president of the NCAC, and we can go from there. The other thing I had on my busy little agenda was to announce the Cambria Fishing Club is going to have their annual fish fry coming up on March 28th. Tickets are for sale at the Chamber of Commerce and also at the Jocelyn Center or from any fishing club member. Thank you very much. We'll see you guys later.
Thank you. Next public comment is Karen Dean, followed by Tina Dickinson.
Karen Dean, Cambria. Before I talk about what I intended to talk about, I would like to say that I am very tired of hearing the word opposition used when it comes to people who care about all of God's creatures on this earth, in land, sea, and water, and the environment that we live in. This does nothing but further divide this community. Everybody here cares about water. And to say one group's in opposition, to me, is just not right. Okay? what I originally intended to talk about is that I feel like there needs to be a little more clarification of public comment policy. I ask this because I so often see so many members of the public frustrated and aggravated when they come before the board with questions or concerns that they cannot get answers or even acknowledgement of. So many people have told me there's no point attending these meetings because the board doesn't answer or listen, that the board doesn't care, and that they just do what they want anyway. I understand the Brown Act in regards to public comment. I realize that the agenda is posted for the public so that the people can decide if they want to attend the meeting based on what is going to be discussed. To discuss an item not on the agenda causes them to lose the opportunity to participate in a discussion that they might have been interested in. I also understand that if 2 or more board members comment or discuss an item not on the agenda, they might appear to be forming a consensus or policy regarding that item. And it does say on your agenda that items not on the agenda during public comment cannot be discussed. However, that did not stop a discussion at the January meeting between the general manager and 3 directors in response to a non-agenda public comment about the forced resignation of the fire chief from the board of the Forest Committee. This discussion did not appear to be conducted within the intent of the Brown Act. It was a discussion that did not give members of the public, in attendance or not, the opportunity to participate in. When the public stands before the board to address items on the agenda, the directors have their own initiative to respond to public questions or comments if they choose to do so. Quite often the directors do not. The item is continued on with as though some of the comments did not matter, and those members of the public feel ignored. I realize the board cannot respond to every question or comment made. This could make the meeting take all night. But the board can refer the question to the general manager, the attorney, another staff member, or another director to respond to that individual at a further point in time. Not all information requested is available by public record request either, as I have found. Maybe if there are enough questions on a specific topic, the agenda can become a future agenda. The subject can become a future agenda item. Some thoughts on a solution to the public getting the answers they need might be to have the general manager possibly, can I finish my sentence?
Yes, you certainly may.
Possibly some of the directors
Okay, no, you're good.
take turns making themselves available a couple hours a month where the public can come express some of their concerns, not unlike what Supervisor Gibson does at the library and what Director Rice so kindly did last fall. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Tina Dickinson, Cambria. Just to follow up on the public comment issue, the very fact that Elizabeth Bettenhausen has on a number of occasions addressed this particular issue and has addressed it carefully, responsibly, and not received answers, but recently received a 2-page letter from General Counsel, Legal Counsel for the district. Why should the ratepayers be paying for Mr. Hirsch to write a letter to respond to Ms. Bettenhausen? I do not understand why that was necessary. The board should establish the policy, and that letter should have come she addressed it to the board. There was a response from legal counsel. How is that possible? I'm going to say a few things. I do not know what in the hell is going on with the CCSD. What I do know is that there is a current investigation, clearly from the grand jury. We have another item for Mr. Carlos Mendoza on the expenditures to go to the grand jury. It's very clear. It's becoming more and more clear. But you represent the Water and the Wastewater Utilities Department. I am really disappointed that the fact that there's no engineer's report when we have this huge project before us, which we now know is problematic. We have had no update on the production, water production from either San Simeon or Santa Rosa since December. If you go to the San Simeon well level creek chart, you can't even find it. It comes up on the page, not found. I tried it several times. Someone else tried it. It's not my computer. The information is not there. I would like to see, as we've seen in the past until this EWS project came about, I want to see how much water is being produced from San Simeon, from Santa Rosa. I want to see our well levels. And when I called the CCSD this morning saying they weren't updated since February 2nd, as the paper had today, all of a sudden this morning we got an update for February 23rd's readings. Those are supposed to be read every single week. It's your job, staff, to have this for us. That's what you're getting paid to do. And I am extremely disappointed with what's going on. There's a heck of a lot more I could say. One thing I'd like to state is on the addendum for the regular meeting minutes that came out today. Why did District Council Tim Carmel state that there was no closed session for the January meeting when it was clear that President Robinette, adjourned to closed session? I checked with one board member who said there was a closed session meeting, so I don't know why you have that there under 1D for the minutes from last on the addendum this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, no further public comments, so public comment is, oh, I'm sorry, pardon me, Mark Kramer.
My name is Mark Kramer, a 17-year full-time resident of Cambria. The overwhelming majority of Cambrians thank our CCSD board and management team for their vision and courage in implementing Stage 3 and going forward with the EWS. All of Cambria can breathe a lot easier knowing that we have an alternative source of water as the drought continues. On the other hand, we have to deal with a vocal minority who are trying to shut down our EWS. We are here to praise CCSD, the vocal minority, to bury our EWS. Misleading tactics were used by members of Cambria's Green Space organization at the morning session of the Coastal Commission February 11th meeting during public comment. We had 50 to 60 members of our group leave the morning meeting in shock while listening to representatives of our vocal minority with the same pack of lies that they have been spouting at our CCSD meeting for years. And I'll speak to two of the falsehoods. One, a neighbor of the San Simeon Creek wellfield, Clyde Warren, has been giving away water from the same aquifer. The reality is that he is not giving it away. He is selling it at a price approximately 4 times the price of water sold by CCSD. But unlike CCSD, Mr. Warren has no downside if the wells run dry. He's just taking advantage of people that will lose their landscapes during the drought. Number 2, our group, Cambrians for Water, does not represent the voice of the community, and most of them are lot owners. On the contrary, Cambrians for Water, with 750 plus members, is comprised of a cross-section of full-time Cambria residents and business owners and represent the largest organization in Cambria. I should know because I personally recruited over 300 friends and neighbors. Paraphrasing words from a recent story, I'd like to say that the vocal minority has been corrupting the information by rigging numbers, misusing facts, and manipulating data to advance their political agenda. The majority of our Cambria community is hungry for authenticity and honesty and continues to resent the pack of lies and untruths that we have heard and continue to hear from this group over the years. Most of us understand that there can be and usually are operational issues during the startup phase of this type of project. Rest assured that as these issues are identified, they can be and will be resolved during the startup period. And I just picked up, and I encourage you to pick up, a press release at the front desk in connection with the 3 confirmed issues that were in the Cambrian today and how they are being handled. Lastly, we would encourage our local community and our vocal minority to work together in a constructive manner, both with our CCSD and the California Coastal Commission, to obtain approval of our regular permit so that Cambrians can use water from the EWS during non-emergency times to maintain the quality of life that we envisioned when we settled here. Conservation still remains a core value and will not be abused. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, on public comment, Mary Webb.
Mary Webb, and you can make that comment from me as Vice President of Green Space, the Cambria Land Trust. This is really unfortunate that this issue has divided this community in this way. The vocal minority is actually 40% of Cambrians did not vote for the emergency water supply project. Green Space has done nothing more than present Cambria CSD water well level data to the Water Board in the form of graphs. These graphs are found on every CSD meeting minutes from, I don't know, at least the last 10 years. Amanda, Director Rice can tell me for the last 10 years or more. It's not Green Space's data that has been presented to these agencies. It's Cambria CSD water level data. Green Space also reported that a resident of San Simeon Creek Road who owns an equestrian center had to euthanize her horse. And that person actually came to a Coastal Commission meeting and gave the testimony herself. She had to euthanize her horse because of the noise levels of the blowers of the emergency water supply project. These issues don't have to divide the community. What should have happened is that we should have had an environmental impact report whereby the community reads the actual document that the CSD delivered on the project, comment on all the issues that were of concern to the project July 22nd, which is what we did, submit all of our comments for responses from the CSD or the CSD's agents. That has not happened. Had those comments been answered, had the regulatory agencies been able to review all of the issues that were brought up back in July of last year, that horse may not have died. Had those issues been resolved by the time they should have been resolved, which was at least, the end of August, there might not have been a chlorine spill. Had those issues been addressed before the project was constructed, brine drift might not be drifting outside the brine pond. This is why you have an environmental impact report, so that people as well as wildlife can be safe. It's pretty simple. It's not, you have a stakeholder process, you decide on a project and you move forward. To have one group say they have 750 members, that's fine. They're not the largest group in town. Green Space has 1,200. So is it my members against your members? It's just ridiculous. It's not the way to build a public works project. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, being no further public comment is now closed. We'll move now to the manager's report.
Madam President?
Yes.
I know we're not going to have a full discussion. I just would like to, since I've been coming to these meetings in 2007, there's always been an issue, and I understand we don't want to have discussion or take action on items not on the agenda. It might not be a bad idea to have at least some kind of tickler file that reminds us that there were questions that were asked that maybe we can get answers for, because I certainly wouldn't want our staff to try and answer questions they didn't know were going to be asked during a public comment, and they may not have the facts directly at their fingertips. So I don't want them to have to answer right away. But I do think some of the questions that get asked, and therefore all the questions, should be at least addressed at some point. And I don't know how we set up a situation where we can do that. But I also think folks need to know that when you have a concern, if you take it to the general manager, that's really where things have to start, and at a meeting isn't always going to be the best place to get the answer. If you're not getting the answer after that, well, then that's a whole different situation. But I mean, the reality is that we don't expect staff to know what questions are going to be asked, but we really should be able to get responses in some fashion. So, I mean, I'd like to at least take that under consideration.
Thank you. I think we should take it under consideration. I certainly have quite a few notes here right now on issues that were raised, and of course we can't with the, with the Brown Act and our policy, we cannot discuss these now. But issues are raised. They do create questions, and I think that it is still important that we do have a good, clear definition of when a response might be expected, and how that person would know. I think we need to take that up at some other time, though, and actually come forward with some kind of clarity. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, now moving on to our General Manager's report and board report. We have this in 2 items. Certainly, first the General Manager, and then we'll move to ad hoc and committee reports.
Thank you, Madam President. If at all possible, I'd like to try to have the meeting over by about 4:15. We have a closed session, and we have a conference call scheduled with Shalene, although our labor negotiator. So she's got some flexibility, but last time so if we can try, I don't want you to, if the meeting's going and things are being discussed, but if we can just kind of keep an eye on the time.
Thank you. I would say, and I think it's helpful that we do put at least a best projection on time spent on each item, and that we would all try to adhere to that, because we do have a follow-up meeting. Thank you.
Yeah, and we did on the regular agenda and some other items. Just really quickly, so I covered that. The engineering's report, I told Bob, I monitor Bob pretty closely. Bob, works an awful lot of hours, just like a lot of the staff do, and because he was working on so many different things, including addressing some of the concerns relating to the EWS, I told him that he just didn't have to do the engineering's report. So it wasn't intentional or premeditated or anything like that. It was just to give the guy a break, because he works a lot of hours, nights, weekends, things like that. So as Ms. Dickinson indicated, the well reports are on the website. They're from the 23rd. The SR4 wells, as of the 23rd, are right around 51 feet, and then the San Simeon Creek wells are at about 20 feet. The WBE monitoring well is at 5.9 feet. I made a note to myself to make sure that we bring those production records up to date. I apologize that they haven't been up to date since December. And I just wanted to, I guess as general manager, I always try to take on and do as much as we possibly can. And you've never heard me talk about limited resources, but we do have limited resources. And so whatever the board's desire is as far as getting information to the public, we'll be more than happy to do that. The administration department is cut back staff. Monique's doing 2 jobs now, and Bob and I are project managing quite a few jobs in addition to managing the district. The wastewater department currently has 3 people, and that was responsible for the lift stations, and we did a recruitment, so we'll be hiring 2 more people. That'll bring them up to 5. And the water department with this EWS, they have 4 people, and 1 more operator's coming on board. So I just want the board and the public to know it's really not an unwillingness on our part. It's strictly just a resource issue. If we had the staff to do it, with the understanding that whatever you direct us to do, we will do, and just some other things may not get done. I think I've covered everything. My general manager's report is included along with the other staff reports. I did have the opportunity, as we talk about limited resources, I did have the opportunity to meet with the president and vice president and discuss staff reports and things like that, and the amount of information that we provide, and possibly discuss some different formats relating to a more efficient way of getting that information to you. So that'll be something that continues to evolve. If I could, and I leave it really up to the president, the press release that was done today, it was released on the 26th today, just a little while ago. I could read it if you'd like me to. It'd just take a minute or so. Yep. And then what I would do after that is just ask you to accept my general manager's report and some of the other reports, and if there's any questions, especially a Bob relating to the EWS or anything like that, we could be more than happy to answer those. In its lengthy February 26 article, Cambrian Water Project Issues Surface, the Cambrian described everything it could find in so going wrong with the emergency water supply project. What did it come up with? We count 3 confirmed issues in the story: noise concerns related to the evaporation pond blowers, communication gaps with government agencies and neighbors of the plant, and a brief release of treated chlorinated water upstream of the San Simeon Creek Lagoon. We don't see these matters as trivial. We are committed to being a good neighbor, to keeping everyone affected by the project fully informed, and to comply with permit requirements and regulations in every detail. The issues noted in the Cambria are in the process of being corrected or have already been corrected. But we also ask readers to consider some context that the Cambrian left out. The issues cited in the article are operational. That is, they are problems on the shore that come to the light when something is up and running, not before. For instance, if you don't really know what evaporation blowers sound like and how the sound carries until you turn them on, even the most exhaustive environmental impact reports and engineering studies won't catch every bug. To use a nautical term, the initial 3-month operational phase of the EWS is its shakedown cruise. The purpose of running it now is to not only to see if it works as designed it does, but also to identify and correct problems that would not have been foreseen earlier. We would like to have found no such problems, of course, but now that we found them, we'll be able to solve them. Opponents of the project will no doubt claim that none of these described in the Cambrian story would have happened if the project would have gone through the usual multi-year environmental review and permitted process rather than being fast-tracked as an emergency measure. They're wrong, because it takes real-world operations to find operational problems. And consider what the current shakedown is accomplishing. It is ensuring that the EWS will be fully tested and ready this summer to do its work of supplying Cambrians with sorely needed water. The current rainy season shaping up is to be subnormal, leading to the 4th year of drought. If the EWS had been shunted to the usual permitted timetable for public works projects in California, it would still be on the drawing board. Then where would our water come from? Good question. So that was just a press release we did. Again, my manager's report, and Bob's here to answer any questions that the board may have of myself or staff. And one thing I did indicate is we put a really good mid-year budget adjustment and staff report together for the board today that provides you a lot of information on where the district is financially, especially the EWS. And Patrick and I will be kind of dovetailing on that and going over it. So thank you.
Thank you. We'll take public comment. We have 2 requests on this, and then we'll have board discussion following that. Okay, the first then is from public comment on item 6, Elizabeth Bettenhausen. Monique.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Listening to that reminded me of sitting in church pews when I was little and listening as they read long sections of the Holy Writ. And it's a complicated memory that comes up there. I hope also that the CCSD will develop a press release on the issue of who represents whom with the Forest Committee. That would be equally important to address when you respond to public Fourth Estate documents. The first thing I had intended to do here, and I want certainly to do, is to thank Courtney. She visited the 5th graders, and she took along devices like timers for showers to help them understand water conservation. And she told me today she also brought along shower heads. But I know about the timers because waiting for the school bus at 1:45 on a Wednesday, I was surrounded by kids who had to show me that they now have timers to use when they take showers. I haven't checked back with them yet on whether that initial enthusiasm has been mitigated by a few problems, but on the other hand, Courtney did an excellent job of speaking with 5th graders at the grammar school about conservation policy and ways that they can ensure that they are saving water. It was very good to see in this agenda packet, as I'm sure you would agree with me, a report from the water supervisor. As I pointed out to you last month, there hadn't been one in several months. There is one now, and I really thank him. I assume it was the water supervisor, Jason Supervisor, last name I forget at the moment in my old age, who wrote that report. If you would look at page 20 there, he refers to the 200-plus monthly monitoring events that must take place in the water department now with the emergency water treatment. But our general manager points out that automatic sampling devices have been purchased to assist the staff in this kind of monitoring. And I hope that there is some understanding of working out between the general manager and the legal counsel as they deliberate on what I'm saying now, working out exactly what legal obligations there are to state clearly to the public, the ratepayers, what is going on with the monitoring. Who's responsible? How are they going to enact the monitoring? I think that the issue of taking on as much as we possibly can, quote, quote, of the general manager who just made the report, I hope that the board, dear board, that you would encourage the gentleman who's your general manager not to do that. I hope that you will encourage your general manager to take on only the programs that will enact the policies that you adopt. And finally, I would say, please, dear ad hoc committee, I don't know who it is, but start deliberating on when we're going to hand over the grant from State Water to pay off our loan before the deadline of August 15th, which is in the finance manager's report. But, of course, I don't have time to talk about that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next on item 6, we have Tina Dickinson. Ta-da.
Tina Dickinson. It is rather remarkable, General Manager, that you are read from a press release today after your staff report that we find in our agenda packet, which has a glowing account of the EWS project, and only because a reporter in the Cambrian reported the truth, because I have been following with the regional board, the DDW, exactly what is they're telling me is going on, and it seemed to be confirmed in the report today in the paper. I am getting a little tired of hearing from C4H2O, as well as even a board director last month who said opposition. Cambrians for Change offered a workshop for a reservoir, off-stream storage, 600 to 700 acre feet of water. Nobody paid any attention to that because, oh no, we're not going to get any rain. But we have. We've gotten close to 11 inches, actually. So we were told at the November regional board meeting, Cambrians were going to be guinea pigs. You are going to be the guinea pigs. Mari Garza Bird said when at the workshop, this is going to be a challenge. Okay, when things are that much of a challenge, and now we're seeing the consequences of not having a regular CDP, an EIR, which we all complained about, and we all advised you to do this differently. We then were called the troublemakers, the opposition. We want water, but not this project. I can say for sure not this project. This is a bad project because it didn't go through any of the conditions that should have been met. And now you're beginning to find out what happens when you don't do things in the way they should be done, listening to regulatory agencies, etc. We have not used a single drop of additional supplemental water since September 9th when the general manager announced in a special meeting. We have not. We've gotten by for 19 months. The aquifers are full. The water from the EWS, where is it going? Where is it going? And how much water is actually, is it in our supply? The general manager said last January meeting that the water is in our supply. I'd like to have at least that answered today by the general manager or possibly the engineer. How much water is being produced from the San Simeon aquifer? Is that mix from the EWS in our water at the present time? And if not, when is it anticipated to be? And please be honest with the community. There are issues. You know about it. The Cambrian was not wrong, and they shouldn't have to rescind what they wrote. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, under public comment, Steve Provost.
Steve Provo, representing the Cambrian. Issues raised in today's Cambrian story concerning the operation of the Emergency Water Project elicited a response in the form of a press release from the CCSD. In this release, the CCSD officials said they don't see these matters as trivial. We must then ask why the district should object to them being raised in conjunction with the district's response to them, which was also included in the article. The press release states that, quote, the issues noted in the Cambrian are in the process of being corrected or have been corrected. Indeed, the steps being taken by CCSD to address the issues in question were contained in the article, including references to mufflers being installed to reduce noise levels, hours of operation being changed to address neighbors' concerns, and the installation of a dechlorination system. The press release further states that the Cambrian, quote, left out information concerning the nature of the problems, that they are the sort of thing that came to light, this is a quote, when something is up and running, not before. In fact, the Cambrian quoted Mari Garza Bird of CDM Smith as saying precisely this. The press release refers to a, quote, shakedown cruise, while Garza Bird, in her interview with the Cambrian on Tuesday, compared it to, quote, a new house. You've got to move in and test everything, make sure everything's working. This precise quote was included in the story, which addressed not only the issues CCSD has acknowledged have surfaced, but also the steps CCSD is taking to resolve those issues. As journalists, we consider it imperative to communicate important issues that are raised concerning this project and other notable issues with the community at large. We consider it just as crucial that we communicate the responses made to those issues by the CCSD and other public agencies. We believe the content of our reporting indicates that we have done so in the present case, and we will continue to strive to meet this standard in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. There being no further public comment on item 6, public comment is closed. And I would turn now to the board for discussion, and I think today we'll start on the right. Director Thompson, do you have some discussion that you want to start?
Not at this point. I think the report's very comprehensive, and I think that it I'll just leave it at that.
And Vice President Cliff?
Yes. I would agree that the reports are very comprehensive. I guess my position on a lot of this is philosophical, in that we hire a general manager to run the operations of this district, and we are requesting that general manager to report to us on the state of the district. The general manager has, in my opinion, probably oversupplied information, and in doing so, I'm wondering if a whole bunch of staff people aren't spending a half a day or a day making a large list of what they did last month, because they need to at least get a page from each one of these people to present to the board, when in fact a whole lot of the items that are included here are simply routine day-to-day activities of the staff, which I don't think they should have to go through that. So my recommendation would be to have the general manager express to us areas that are of concern, of things that are activities that have gone on in the past month, and to things that are upcoming that would be of a policy issue to the board, not just a simple procedural issue within the administration of the departments which we give him the authority to oversee. I don't have a problem with him requiring that reports like this be provided to him for his monitoring and review, but I'm not so sure that it should be a situation in which we're killing a lot of trees here for basically routine information. And so that's my only concern. I would be willing to allow the general manager and trust the general manager to highlight the good that's going on, the bad that's going on, and the future that's upcoming that would be of concern to the board. And that's just a philosophical position.
Thank you. Director Rice?
Just speaking to that, I agree some of those reports do include some routine stuff that doesn't speak to how the general manager is implementing the policies and priorities of the board, because that's really what our job is to be setting policies and then ensuring that the general manager is staffed properly and appropriately, and he and his staff are implementing those policies in a way that makes sense based on the board's priorities as we've all agreed on them. I frankly like to have the reports. I know a lot of people in the community do too. It is a matter of there are things in there that are very repetitive and we don't necessarily need to be looking at. But I do think that it's important for our fiduciary responsibilities to know that the folks that we're paying salaries to using funds from the community are, that they're working well, and I think that the general manager can speak to that as far as making it more like a report that explains the implementation and how he's managing the resources of the district. Those resources include both the financial resources and the resource of the Fiscalini Ranch and the resources of our water supply and our infrastructure, including the wastewater treatment plants, so the collection system and the advanced water treatment system. And all of those things are important, and that may be how these developed. And I can understand that, but I also think there's a place for, sometimes we don't need as much of this super detail on each one. A couple of other things that I have. I had asked at the meeting, and I don't know if this got passed on to you, Mr. Gruber, a question about what's the balance of the water supply that we're using. Are we using San Simeon at all right now? Or are we relying primarily on Santa Rosa? I don't know if that question got passed along to you or not.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Bob, you want to answer that?
I'm sure. I have the production report from last month, and I can just tell you that a little over 50% was from San Simeon. They had 19.95 acre feet produced from San Simeon and 14.77 from the Santa Rosa aquifer, for a total of 34.72 acre feet for that month.
Are we using primarily SR4 or SR? Do we have no?
I don't have that
probably don't have
information
it in
at
front
hand,
of
but
you. I'm sorry.
I can say that it looks like.
I don't want to put you on the spot. I just was curious.
Yeah, it looks like about maybe 2/3 was coming from San Simeon. That would have been either SS1 or SS2, and then the other would have been either probably SR4, I imagine, maybe SR3, but most likely SR4.
I can find out.
I'm just interested in knowing how that affects the level of the WBE, because these are it's kind of important, and I'm really glad that the engineer seems to have a good handle on how to balance the two aquifers so that we're not doing damage. I just mostly for curiosity and for the public's information. I like to know when I turn on my faucet how much I'm getting from each.
From where?
But I'm not necessarily typical of most Cambrians.
And we'll make sure that's on. Bob, is that on the website? You said it. I thought.
It's usually on the charts that we didn't have this month, but we're above well above the 3-foot minimum of well WBE, which is the monitoring well on Santa Rosa. That usually gets the tightest in the summer months. So typically, the July-August period is where that one gets close to its limit, and where we did have issues with it last year.
We'll get that on the website for you.
Thank you. I
and for the
appreciate
community.
That. Two other very brief things. One is Madam President, I'd like to once again suggest that maybe an additional meeting, whether we have the fire chief conduct a meeting on how to protect yourself in case there is a fire, because the ongoing drought means that the fire danger is higher than it would otherwise be if we had a normal year, the past couple of years in terms of rain, and maybe even in addition to some kind of less formal than our standard business board meetings, where we can give out some of the information about what's going on with the advanced water treatment project, because it did go very fast, and we are as fast as we find out about issues that need to be addressed, we're addressing them, and I feel comfortable with what's happening right now. Be better if it was perfect in the first place. I'm not going to argue that. I don't think anybody would, but I feel like we're comfortable with the corrections we're making when we find out there's something going on. But it would be good for us to be able to provide the community with a little bit more information about, I mean, there's a lot of folks that just don't know. They missed that week in the Cambrian where we were turning it on, and, they don't know how often it's going to be running. And so I'd just like to suggest that maybe that could be something we should consider doing, because the more information we can provide to Cambrians, I think the better that they'll feel about the situation and feel less unsure about what's going on. Last thing is, just have a question. This isn't on the agenda, and it wasn't in the manager's report or the report of the facilities and resources manager. How is it that we changed the rules about off-leash use for dogs on the Fiscalini Ranch? It appears there was a comment made on an item not on the agenda during the public comment for our board committee of the pros, and then action was taken to change what's going on the ranch without having any public discussion that was even agendized for people to be able to know that was going to be changing. In fact, it seems like action was taken on an issue of policy that might even rise to the level of demanding consideration and adoption of some kind of ordinance locally. The board and public haven't had a chance an opportunity to discuss or deliberate, and no report was provided on how such a change would be enforced and what impact it might have on our staff. Was there an incident that precipitated the action? Was there consideration of bringing the question to the board? Is it a legal action that we had no option in solving? I've heard from a couple of people that are surprised, and I feel we should have at least had it somewhere on an agenda rather than during a public comment at one of the committee meetings of this board. I mean, that seems like but I don't know anything about it yet because we haven't had even a report. So,
if I might,
yes, that would be under ad hoc. Do you want to bring it up under ad hoc or now?
That's on the next agenda item. So
okay.
Under ad hoc report.
Thank you.
So
if you want to address it then or now,
we're still,
either way.
It should be on the agenda. Since it's an agenda, it's not going to be on.
Yeah, on the ad hoc. Mm-hmm.
As we talked about. And I don't have much comment. I tend to think that it's nice to have some of these reports. On the top of page 21, they performed routine back dye sampling on the water system every Tuesday to ensure that we're sending safe drinking water to the public. And that's kind of a routine thing. We saw it once. I don't think we have to see it every week. And also, if I could ask once again, maybe we could just practice. Unlike item 9A, for instance, item 9B, we do have a two-sided copier, so we could just try that. It would make it half as thick. Two-sided copier does work. And just to remind, and I'm sure it's in the financial, I mentioned it last month, and I'd like us to take a hard look at the State Water Resources Control Board to see if they can provide any revolving fund loans to us. Maybe we can refinance one of these in the State Water Resources Control Board. We can strike while the iron's hot. Perhaps they've changed some rules or whatever, but I think that's something we should look into. That's all.
Okay. Thank you. I'd like to comment too before we finish. On the question of water and when we turn the plant on, and this would be a question for Mr. Gressens. Part of what seems to be being said around town and is that the water that's now in a 2-month travel time again to the production well, that somehow that particular water that's being treated in the plant is also in our system. Is that true?
No, it was, the plant was started up on January 20th, and there's a 2-month travel time underground before it starts entering the production well. So we haven't had that 2-month period where it would have even been pumped into the distribution system yet. So it's still in the groundwater.
Thank you. I think it's so important that we all do share information, and that we certainly have the facts. And so I hope that people will know. Then it would be more likely close to, okay, so about March 20th we could expect it. Is that true?
Yeah, approximately.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Moving then, no further discussion from the board on the general manager's report. Then our ad hoc and other committee reports from the board. So shall we start? Let's start on, okay, either side. Mike?
Yeah,
Excuse me, Director Thompson?
Yeah, Director, I think you can cover it. Yes, as the liaison to the Friends of the Fiscalini Ranch Preserve, I attended their board meeting, and it was brought to my attention that there have been a number of issues increasing with respect to dogs off leash on the ranch, ranging from dog bites to dogs engaging in aggressive activity with other dogs to dogs chasing birds and other animal life on the ranch. And it was also brought to the attention that that the county leash law requires that or does not exempt our property from following the provisions of the county leash law. And so there was a considerable amount of discussion at FFRP regarding this issue, and they determined that that the ranch should be brought in compliance with county ordinance. Doing as such, actions that have been taken thus far is that any signage which suggested that it was permissible to have dogs off leash were removed from the ranch, and there will be some new signage which will request compliance with the county ordinance, as well as things like no smoking on the ranch and so forth, that will be developed and put on at the entrances to the ranch. Let's see. That's pretty much the extent of it thus far. Enforcement, obviously, is going to be an issue. We do not have the capability to police dogs being off leash on the ranch, but we have there are some websites that have basically been encouraging folks to bring their dogs to run loose on the ranch, which we will be requesting that they not promote this activity, because again, we feel it's important that we remain in compliance with the county ordinance, and that's pretty much the extent of it thus far. And Director Berenger, if you have anything to add. Not from an FFRP's perspective. You're the liaison there. This month, the Pros Commission meeting was canceled due to the fact that we didn't get an agenda out on time. But as a liaison with the Pros Commission, there was a little discussion by some people that showed up by accident. They didn't see the cancellation, and there was some discussion about that. But I tend to think that any policy change should be, even though some action has already taken, I think that they're at least Pros should take some kind of a vote action to advise the board on any proposed changes. Their Parks, Recreation, and Open Space, they are a standing committee. They do have an agenda, and I would hope that being in compliance with the law, I think, is one issue. I would, if the law needs to be changed, perhaps we take that activity. But Pros Commission should advise us as a standing committee. That's my thoughts.
Okay, and I don't know at this time if this is a time to bring it up, but on this, because while we're talking about it, it would be good, I think, just again for advising and public to know what you're discussing here, that we would bring it back as an agenda item next month with more of an update and recommendation.
Madam President, I believe I put it on the pros agenda for next Tuesday. Kind of the order in which things go, and Director Rice has some really good questions regarding this. So it was, as Director Thompson indicated, it was discussed at FFRP. That's kind of the starting point on things, since they're the conservation easement holder. From there, it'll migrate to pros, and I believe it's on the agenda. I'm pretty sure it's on the agenda. It's an important issue, and then from there, it'll be brought back to the board. But I've received some phone calls too. But really what we're doing is we had a conversation about consistency with the language of the signs. There was a lot of inconsistency on some of the entrances to the ranch, and so clearly delineating at least the county ordinance as it in regards to dogs on leash, which. Since we don't have any land use authority, it really supersedes anything that we would have. So, yeah, and that's why it was going to be brought to Parks and Rec. So we want to, we don't, we'll make sure that it's on the March agenda and brought back to you.
I think that would be good, just if we're making some changes, just to have some closure on it, on the rationale and why we feel it's necessary.
And one of the things that the sign's going to say, and we're not real big sign proponents, we want to try to have the signs as small as possible. That was indicated to us by FFRP also, because we don't want signs everywhere, but we do want, is, no smoking. I think that was indicated, no firearms, those type of things, kind of a list of things that have been brought to our attention, but We'll do a better job in making sure that it's communicated. Yeah, we were surprised to hear that there has, that Carlos said that somebody was out there with firearms one time.
Yes, I understand that people have been out there shooting guns and smoking, and all of that puts our forest at great risk. Absolutely. And people's lives at great risk. So sometimes it's good to take a look and kind of focus the entire community on why things are posted and what we need people to do.
And Director Thompson, I don't think I brought a copy of the ordinance with me, but do you have the language? I apologize. I knew this was going to come up today, and
I did. Basically, it requires that on any public street, alley, lane, park, or place, whatever nature open to and used by the public in the unincorporated area of the county, that unless such dog is securely leashed and the leash is held continuously, or unless the dog is securely confined in a vehicle, or, and there's one other caveat, unless the dog is at heel beside a person and obedient to that person's command. I think the language posted on like the Marine Terrace, that the dog had to be under voice control. My little mutt's usually under voice control, but he's certainly not going to be standing around at heel, so actually she's going to be affected by this too.
Okay, well, we'll hear more formally next month on the agenda too.
Can you tell me what time that Pros Commission meeting is going to be, please?
Yes, it's 10 o'clock next Tuesday, and we have it here we have it right in this room over here, and we got an agenda posted this time, so
thank you very much.
We're ready to go.
Okay, other committee reports, ad hoc reports, budget?
Yes, I attended, we had an ad hoc committee for the bylaws and an ad hoc committee for budget, both of which are agendized items, so we'll
okay.
on with that.
Okay, we'll wait till then. We have a public comment request. Did you have something, Director Rice?
Yeah, I just wanted to make note that I attended the Coastal Commission meeting, but I didn't speak for the board. I spoke on behalf of the Forest Committee. And on the Tuesday before this is mostly just a disclosure so everybody knows in case you didn't, Commissioner Eric Howell had had a tour set up for the commissioners to go and check out the Oceano Dunes, and so I went out, and he invited me to go, and I went out and was riding around on the dunes with a couple of commissioners, and the ranger that was driving the Jeep was actually the ecologist for the Oceano Dunes Off-Road State Park, whatever the official name of it is. And it was interesting because we got a lot of information, including about snowy plovers and other fauna that we have in this area in our beaches. So I just thought I'd make sure that everybody was aware that they asked me questions about the project, and I said I'm not the engineer. So.
Thank you. We have a request for member reports under 6B, public comment. Tina Dickinson.
Thank you, President Robinette. Regarding, just quickly, since Director Rice brought it up, I was there Wednesday, late Thursday and Friday at the Coastal Commission meeting. I purposely chose not to go Wednesday because I knew the Oceano Dunes was going to bring out tons of people, and it was absolutely packed when I got there around 5:30. Your name, Director Robinette, was called out 3 times at 7:30 p.m. on Wednesday for you to speak. I didn't choose to speak on Wednesday, but Thursday and Friday there was no problem because there were very few speaker slips turned in. Wednesday was incredibly huge, as I'm sure you saw, but they did call your name 3 times. Apparently there were 3 slips presented in your name. Regarding the ranch, my neighbors took a walk. She and her husband walked on the Huntington Trail. And when they were coming, they went all the way back down to the Bluff Trail, walked up, and came across 7 teenagers with guns about that long. They couldn't determine from the distance they were at whether they were actual firearms or if they were BB guns, but they decided not to take the trail back on Huntington. They walked all the way through the grass because they were a little bit leery about the situation there. So I bring that to your attention. The signs about dogs is it still very clear that the Bluff Trail, there are to be dogs on leashes? Is that sign still up?
I believe those have been left up.
They have been left up.
Must be on leash on the Bluff Trail.
All right, another issue. I think at last month's meeting, events on the ranch. We were talking about the Fiscalini Ranch and events. Nothing was mentioned on what kind of events could be held. But my husband and daughter were walking the Bluff Trail and certainly saw a wedding party on the bluff part of the trail. It was not clear at all, and I meant to ask that question: what events will be allowed or are allowed on the ranch itself? We don't know, and I think that really needs to be addressed. So signs, we may not like signs, but they're very important, as the CCSD may be learning that on their property on Van Gordon Creek Road, it might be well advised to put up no trespassing signs. There are none. On Van Gordon Creek Road at the south end where the Spillman house is, there's nothing. You wouldn't even know it was CCSD property. I've driven down there, absolutely nothing. Also, before you reach the vehicle bridge where the mitigation pipe was going to the lagoon, there's nothing there. There are nothing. So to accuse people of trespassing when you don't even have a sign up there is a problem that you might want to look at. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think then we are ready to move on to items 7 on the consent agenda, and no items were pulled. Did we have a brief comment? You have a brief comment? Okay.
Move acceptance of the consent agenda.
I'll second it.
Okay. When did you want to make your comment?
I just wanted to thank Ms. Madrid for updating the minutes to include who was on which committee, because when I met with staff this week before the meeting, that is the primary change in the agenda. There was an error about a switch that was going on, but I also thought it important so in the minutes it says who's on which committee, so that it was clear to the public if they have a question about a particular area where there might be an ad hoc committee assigned, they know who they should be talking to. So that's why there's a green addendum, at least partly. I don't know if there were other changes that had been made, but I thank her very much for taking care of doing that for us.
Could I also make one brief comment?
Yes.
I'm convinced that item 1D, that District Counsel Tim Carmel stated that there was nothing to report from the closed session, not that there wasn't a closed session. If that's my recollection. So with that correction, I think we can accept the minutes.
Thank you. That is also what I heard today. So thank you for that correction. Any other comments? Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve then the consent agenda. I think on this one we can have just a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Okay, moving on then to item 8 on hearings and appeals. We have then, do we have our Mr. Humphrey here? Okay, sir, if you could let us go ahead and introduce this first.
Certainly.
And then, so there'll be an introduction of this by the general manager, and then we will ask you then to also present.
Okay.
It will be a few minutes. You willing to?
I'll stand here and let the adrenaline
All right. Thank you.
flow.
Okay, general manager, if you will then go ahead and present this item.
Thank you, Madam President. Item 8A is appeal of water and sewer charges for Barry Humphrey, 2137 Pitt Place. The recommendation to the board is recommended that the appeal by Mr. Humphrey for relief of his water and sewer charge at 2137 Pitt Place be denied. Just really quick on the fiscal impact. I'm not going to read the whole report. I assume that the board has read the report. Mr. Humphrey was invoiced $279.59 for 12 units of water used in July and August. That invoice included a penalty of $121. Mr. Humphrey was invoiced $1,651.89 for 42 units of water used in September and October. That invoice included a penalty surcharge of $1,072.75. In response to Mr. Humphrey's objections to the charges, the district general manager, that's me, decided to charge Mr. Humphrey for the water and sewer charges used and waive the penalty surcharges, which resulted in Mr. Humphrey being credited to the amount of $1,193.75. Although the general manager waived the penalty surcharges, Mr. Humphrey continues to insist that he did not use the water and is requesting additional credit for the account for water he feels he did not use. He would like to be charged based on his average usage for only 3 units of water for July and August billing period instead of the 12 units the meter shows were used. He would also like to be charged for only 4 units of water for September and October billing period instead of the 42 units the meter shows were used. That would be an additional credit of $65.86 for the period of July and August billing period, and for an additional credit of $471.47 for the September-October billing period. The total additional credit would be $537.33. The discussion, Mr. Humphrey originally contacted the office on September 22nd of 2014 by the telephone. He had received his utility bill for July and August, which showed 12 units of water. He stated that he had read his water meter and determined that another 40 units of water had gone through the meter since the August meter reading. At this time, staff determined that his property was on the leak list. The district attempted to respond to the properties on the leak list each day. However, water department staff had not yet been able to respond to the property. On September 22nd, 2014, the water department staff initially responded to the property and the water meter was not turning. No visible outside leaks were detected at the homeowner and the homeowner was present. Staff also conducted a bucket test and verified that the water meter at the property was functioning properly. We also offered to pull the meter and have it sent to National Meter for testing. We explained to Mr. Humphrey that based on the results, he would have to pay for the testing should the report come back and the meter is functioning properly, if the meter was functioning properly. Staff also verified that the meter read correctly and that the read correctly with the read that was in the billing system. The Humphreys were out of town on April 22nd to September 17th, 2014. Our office determined that the property was on the leak list when we read the meter on August 28th, 2014. Since the Humphreys did not return home until September 17th, it appears that the problem carried over from the August until September, thus creating this usage over 2 water bills. On October 1st, 2014, Mr. Humphrey was notified in writing that the property was over his allocation of 8 units by 33 units of water. Mr. Humphrey stated that the water at the property was already turned off while he was gone, except twice each month when his assistant came to the house every other week to flush the toilets and run water in the sinks and showers, to keep the sewer gases from collecting in the house through the traps. He also states that he was not responsible for paying for the water. Staff had a lengthy conversation with Mr. Humphreys where it was determined that his ball valve is functioning properly, and when it's shut off to the off position, waste does not flow through the meter and into his house. Staff believes that if the water had been shut off on the property, that they could have been then they could have not been on the leak list. The leak list indicates that the water is being pulled through the water meter continuously over a 24-hour period for 2-hour breaks. The fact that the property was on the leak list is an indication that something inside the property may have malfunctioned, which caused the irregular water use. Staff believes that the water shutoff valve could have accidentally been left off, since Mr. Humphreys has confirmed that it works properly. Additionally, no evidence of the water leak is an indication that the water went through the sewer system. Attached is the correspondence from Mr. Humphrey submitted to our office on September 25, 2014. Based on the facts surrounding the water loss, both Mr. Humphrey and the CCSD staff believe that the water loss was not a result of theft. Mr. Humphrey believes that there is a problem with the water meter. Staff would like to clarify how the technology of the water meter works. Our water meters are radio read. Our staff uses a laptop or handheld device to read the transmitter, which is attached to the water meter. When the equipment malfunctions, either the transmitter will stop sending a read to our system, or the dial will get sand or dirt stuck in its gears. Both of these incidents will result in a 0 read. The equipment does not speed up. Mr. Humphreys believes that the water meter at his property is not functioning properly and that the water meter skipped ahead. Both staff and Mr. Humphreys have spoken to Richard McKendrick, the National Water Meter. National Water Meter is a company that sells Badger water meters to the CCSD. Richard McKendrick verified that based on the type of water meter installed at Mr. Humphrey's property, I should read, in the water meter had skipped ahead, the transmitter would have a different reading than the read on the water meter. The error would have been discovered by our staff. It does not appear that that the meter is defective, and we believe that the amount of water indicated on the meter was actually used. When a toilet leaks, it typically uses about 100 units a month, which is consistent with the amount of water used by the end of August and the beginning of September. The combined units of this time period is 54 units. So again, I just wanted to read the whole thing because it's covered a pretty extensive period of time and it's required a lot of staff time. Again, the staff's recommendation is it's recommended that the appeal by Mr. Humphrey for relief of his water and sewer charge at 3137 Pitt Place be denied.
Thank you, and thank you for being here today, Mr. Humphrey, and so we would like to hear from you now.
Okay. What I would like to do is I'd like to have a copy of that report and then come back to this meeting so I can pick apart the individual pieces in there that are in error. I can't do that standing here and from memory. And I was only notified at 2 o'clock in the afternoon yesterday that I would even be appearing before this meeting. This has been a constant problem between myself and Courtney with her complete disbelief in anything that I have told her, and it's been a complete manipulation of the process and the system. And so I'm going to wait because I want to take that report and take it apart because this is just lunacy. I requested to see Jerry Gruber back in September, and I have made that request 4 times since then, and has never been allowed to sit face-to-face with him and talk about this. And just getting it this far to this group is absolutely ridiculous. And I would love to take that report and come back with my comments that I'm not going to do standing here shooting from the hip. It's full of errors.
Madam President?
Did you, Jim?
No, go ahead. I mean, my recommendation
yeah.
is that we don't extend this, but it's the board's prerogative. You know, in good faith, we credit him, Mr. Humphrey, for the amount of $1,193.75 during this.
Yeah, that's like being a little bit pregnant.
Excuse me, I'm talking, Mr. Humphrey. Severe water shortage. We've spent an enormous amount of time, staff time, on this, and to come back and to spend more staff time is really not in the district's best interest. But with that being said, I'll do whatever the board's pleasure is. If they want to continue this to another time to allow Mr. Humphrey to come back and repudiate the results of the staff report, you know, we'll do whatever the board wants to.
Thank you, Director Ballinger.
I would recommend, and I hate doing this, I hate kicking the can down the road, you know that, but I think it's our responsibility to make sure that the appellant has all the information in front of him so that he can get up and make a comment.
Exactly.
And so I would suggest that we table this item, and if the applicant wants to continue his appeal next month, we should consider that. That's my.
Is that a motion?
Is that in the form of a motion? Should it be?
I move that we table this item
Second.
till next month.
Okay, it's been moved.
Second.
And now seconded. Any further discussion from the board? Okay, we're ready for the question. Let's have a roll call vote.
Director Berenger?
Yes.
Director Rice?
Yes.
Director Thompson? Vice President Cliff?
No.
Vice President, President Robinette?
Yes. Motion to come back next month after you've had your time.
And by the way, I need to know the date, and I didn't know the location, and I was not giving any information on the procedure.
Well, you certainly, I can appreciate that, and I'm sure that you will feel pretty comfortable and well prepared now for when you come back next month.
I will
Thank
be.
you.
May I have a copy of the report now?
Yes. Why don't you see them? Certainly, we want you to have a copy of the report.
I can give you a copy of mine.
Let me make good.
Okay. Yeah. Did you want to autograph it? No.
No.
All right.
I don't need my signature on it. My card's there for you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I might say that the discussions I've had with Courtney.
Could we hold that until next month?
Yeah, please.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, now then we are into regular business. And so our first item under 9A is going to be introduced by General Manager Gruber. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam President. 9A is discussion and consideration to approve professional services agreement with Advantage Technologies Incorporated for project engineering and construction management of the replacement of the Fiscalini tank.
I move that we accept.
If we could, Mr. There is a brief PowerPoint presentation. If it's okay with the board, I've asked him to put something together for us, and then after he gives a presentation, there's a few things. I want to make sure the board and the community understands the order in which this has occurred. Staff, Justin, the water department, and the regulatory folks have had concerns about the structural integrity of the Fiscalini tank for some time, and what I felt as part of our due diligence is that an independent person other than staff brought you something that supports and really shows that our concerns related to this tank are warranted. So I thought it was the prudent thing to do to bring in an expert and really evaluate this tank. After the presentation, I can answer some questions. Director Rice had some really good questions for staff about the concerns of the replacement of the tank. doing it under emergency coastal development permit, the concerns associated with the Pine Knolls tank and things like this, and what this is a replacement of the existing tank. So it's really just taking the existing footprint and taking the same tank, and although the design would be a little different, the size would be the same. But with that, if I could go ahead and introduce our guest and have him go ahead and are you ready to give the presentation? Great.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gruber. Thank you, President Robinette and the board. My name is Will Bellis. I'm with Advantage Technical Services. We're a small engineering business. We specialize in water storage tank structures, quality assurance on construction projects, and construction management. We've been in business for about 15 years in the area, and our credentials are unique in the industry in that we specialize in storage tanks. So as we discussed, we're talking about the Fiscalini tank. Let's see if I can get, it's a bolted structure. The existing tank has been in place for about 23 years. It is the sole source of potable and fire suppression water for about 500 homes. I keep skipping. Excuse me. Jump back. Okay. It's located down in the lower right-hand corner, southeast of Ellis Avenue, in a remote area on a small site easement. In 2011, we first inspected this tank. We entered it with sanitary diving methods and looked at the interior and the exterior. We found numerous holes in the roof from corrosion and significant metal loss on the shell. This is a typical picture on the roof of some of the corrosion. Because of the salts that come in with the nightly fog or the regular fog, exteriors of tanks like this in the coastal regions, we find they're problematic. This is a photo of the roof of the tank at the roof vent. And you can see the numerous patches around that red center area. Those are patches that the operations personnel have been putting on there, along with spot coating repairs. They've extended the life of this tank a little bit, or actually significantly, but it's getting to where it's time to replace. As a bolted tank, these tanks come factory painted. The panels do, with the holes in them, and they assemble them on site. This makes for a relatively quick and inexpensive assembly, but it also makes it very difficult to field coat these tanks. They're not really designed for long-term service with field repairs or field coatings. You either have to replace full panels or replace the entire tank generally. The state health inspectors came out, and I've got the report from them that during a 2012 sanitary survey, they found this tank to be in poor condition and stated that they thought it needed to be replaced. This is another photo of the roof area with corrosion, coating repairs, and patches. This area is in the lower shell where it connects to the bottom of the tank. And for me, as an engineer involved in tank structures, this is probably the scariest area. We did ultrasonic thickness measurements, and we're finding the original steel is only 60% of the corroded steel is only about 60% of the original, so 40% material loss. And in areas like this is the highest stress area of the tank, the highest pressure from hydrostatic pressure of the water, and in a case of an earthquake, it would also be additional stresses from rocking. So we're concerned about this area, and because of this, after a recent inspection, wrote a recommendation to replace this tank because we're concerned that it wouldn't sustain much of an earthquake. It wouldn't be providing the services that we need after an earthquake. After the determination or various inspections that we've done, we looked at corrective options and whether or not to repair or replace. There are numerous panels on this tank that are corroded to the extent that we would recommend replacement. And once you get to the numbers that we're looking at, like 35 panels, we estimate, it becomes a fairly easy decision that it's more of a situation where you put in a new tank or of some sort rather than replace that many panels. Looking at the new tank options, there are several. Probably the most common solutions would be either a bolted tank of the same size. That's one of the least expensive options, as I said. But the problem, as I've also said, is that the bolted tanks are difficult to maintain in the long term. You may probably, you could estimate that 25 years life expectancy. That's what we're seeing in the district here. That's what we're seeing in most of the coastal areas with similar exposure. A welded tank is almost twice as much upfront cost, but that's because it's heavier. You get thicker shell. You get more paint applied in the field. And with that, you have a structure that is able to be maintained and recoated and give you a much longer service life. In addition to different tank options as far as structure types, we've looked at whether or not we could put 2 tanks out there, and the operations folks would love to have some redundancy, but that's not really a practical option, both because of the size of the site and because of permitting limitations. So just wanted you to know that we've looked at many different alternatives. It takes us back to, like Mr. Gruber said, we kind of feel like the best option and value is in a tank of the same size as what we have out there. We think that maybe a welded tank would give you a better long-term service, and we would place it virtually in the same location. We'd take advantage of the infrastructure that's there. And that's really kind of summarizes where we've been on this, and I wanted to let you ask any questions that you might have.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. Yes, we do have, no, not on A. There is no request for public comment on item A under 9. Okay? Okay. So thank you for the presentation. Board, does anyone have a question for clarification at this point?
Yeah, I have one quick question. If it's a welded tank, are you going to pre-assemble it entirely, or are you going to weld it on site?
No, that would be field directed for this size of tank.
Okay. And Mr. Gruber, this $117,000 is for the study, not the construction of the tank. Is that correct?
It's for the design of it, and then Mr. Bellis would be the project manager, including making sure that the bid packet for that amount that was indicated on there would be distributed to multiple firms that would bid on the project. And so his services is to design it for us and to project manage it for us, get all the bid packets out that's in accordance with our specifications and district council to review, and all the necessary permitting. So essentially, what I'm asking the board to do is approve those services for him, and then we could, once we get the bid packets back, and correct me if I'm wrong, the bid packets back with a determined price, it would be back on the agenda for board consideration, with Patrick and I bringing you alternative funding mechanisms.
Okay. With that, I would move that we
Okay, there is no public comment, so we are ready then.
I do have a couple questions, really quick.
Well, let's get the motion first then, please.
I move that we contract for project engineering and construction management of the replacement of the Fiscalini tank, our professional services guy here. What's his name?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we do approve this.
Advanced technical services.
These services. Board discussion? No?
I have some, Madam President.
You have what?
I have a couple questions.
Oh, questions, yes.
I saw in here that there's going to be, we're going to try and do it under emergency permit. Does that mean we'll still have to go back to do a regular permit, or because it's like an emergency permitting in a different way from the other?
I would recommend that we, based on what's been presented us today, to go forward with an emergency coastal development permit. I can appreciate the sensitivity related to that. We do not want to appear to San Luis Obispo County that every time we have a project that's an emergency.
This is clearly urgent.
Yeah,
I get that.
Yeah.
I'm just asking for the process if we're going to have to do a follow-up to, and I don't know the way that it works on.
No, well, and correct me if I'm wrong. It's my understanding that would be the part of the process. And there was a couple questions that I fielded regarding this project relating to the Pine Knolls tank. The Pine Knolls tank was classified as in an ESHA, which is an environmentally sensitive area, and so there was involved the Coastal Commission. It also, and please correct me if I'm wrong, was a tank that represented a significant larger tank than was originally there, which triggered concerns relating to growth. And that's not the case here. We feel fairly confident that if we were to bring these results in this study to the county, sat down with them and said, we would like you to issue this to us, there wouldn't be any problems. The biggest thing is that tank sits up on the coastline. When you're in a boat or a ship out there, you can see it. One of the questions that would be asked as criteria for that emergency coastal development permit or that permitting process would be, is that going to change? Is it going? And the answer to that would be no. So we feel that, with the good working relationship we have with the county, that it shouldn't be a problem. But I would.
I think you're absolutely right. That's definitely the strategy and what we're hoping for.
And will you be doing the project management through when we hook that thing up and start using it?
Yes.
And is that part of what's included with this 117?
Correct. We develop a bid package that encourages responsible bidding. We take it to with
so you're
some
going to carry
assistance.
us through the whole process to the certificate of completion.
That's what we do. We give you construction quality assurance to make sure that the contractor provides what you paid for, and we manage it. We oversee the construction.
And are we looking into anything other than steel? Because I understand steel welded versus bolted is a much better option, especially considering the environment here. Have we looked at other materials at all?
Definitely. Concrete is
I just want to make sure that we're not just one.
No. Concrete is absolutely a viable option for tanks. It's, again, it's a step more expensive. It solves some of the corrosion issues, but it leaves some other issues unanswered. So we've considered that really for the tanks of this size, that kind of is the limitation of what's happening in the industry. So we've looked at those options.
My last point is that feeds off of something that Director Cliff said earlier in the meeting, which was about that staff does what staff does, and when I first saw this agenda item, I thought, well, I know that because of the size of it, the board needs to approve this kind of thing, and I was thinking, why do we need to have PowerPoint? But I have to say that I appreciate the fact that we have had this person here for the presentation, because it builds the confidence in the community and in me that we've got somebody in charge of the project that clearly is competent and knows what they're doing. So I appreciate that, even though it does take a little more time to do that we've We've done that in this situation.
I do have one question.
Okay, and then question from Vice President Cliff.
Is it the intent at this point in time to use the exact same foundation that's there now?
No, unfortunately, well, the good and bad of it is that the industry has learned from seismic events, and the codes have gotten more stringent, and so we're pretty sure, based on initial engineering, that we would have to have a concrete foundation, and the new tank would be anchored, and it would have a few other seismic upgrades that actually would give you more reliable tank service.
So it will occupy the same footprint, but be upgraded to meet earthquake and other standards?
Yes, virtually the same footprint. The concrete may stick out about 8 inches beyond what the steel tank is now, but there's a grade band there, so it's virtually the same.
Further discussion? Yes, Director Thompson.
Just a little clarification as to what constitutes construction quality assurance. We will be contracting with another firm to actually do the construction and put the project together. And for instance, in the budget, there's funds for welding in the field. Will you actually be out there with providing the welding, or just overseeing, or how does that work?
No, we oversee the construction. The contractor is responsible for running their work. They're responsible for meeting the safety and environmental regulations. What we do is we document that they are doing that. We're also bound by the California Building Code to monitor some of the welding inspection as some of the welding as a third party. We would look at the way they apply the coatings to make sure that, again, optimize the service life of the tank by making sure that you're getting the provisions of the code or the contract are met.
Okay, I have any other? I have some questions now too. Okay, so on this, then, you would be truly acting as an independent contractor. You would put the design together. You would have oversight then for the construction. You would put the project out to bid to see who's bidding on it. Timelines, if this were to move forward without too much delay, when would you anticipate the tank being installed and operational?
I'm not very well prepared to answer that, but I would ballpark it at 9 months from now to a year. By the time we develop the engineering package, there's a certain amount of space between then and when you can go to bid. The bid is advertised, allows contractors to become aware of the project. Then they have to order, once the low bidder is determined, they have to order steel, get that into their shop and fabricate it, and then go to the field. So we'd be working with operations, and they'd need to be figuring out how they would work with the water supply and the tanks that they've got, and just coordinate that.
So in your experience on a project like this, and from today, about a year and a half from now, we would have it installed and operating? I
think that's safe to say.
Kind of a best estimate. Okay, and typically, since this is the work you do, what typically for a tank like this, and you've said there's really only 3 options, there's 2 different metal materials or concrete. There's nothing, not another material that can be used. So typically, what price range do you see for bids from then the builder on this type of project?
I think that we're probably looking at around $450,000 for the construction cost, for the concrete foundation, excavation for that, through the steel construction and the coating of the steel. That would be my guess with the preliminary engineering that we've done now.
Okay. All right. I think that's all the questions that I have. Any further discussion or questions? Are we ready for the question? Okay, then we'll do a roll call vote for approval. And could you read the motion again?
Good old. I move that we approve professional services agreement with Advantage Technical Services for project engineering and construction management of the replacement of the Fiscalini tank.
And it has been seconded. Okay, roll call.
I think
Amend.
Merle did.
Oh, Merle did.
Yes, he seconded before we started.
Director Berenger,
Yeah, aye.
Vice President Cliff,
Aye.
Director Thompson,
Aye.
Director Rice, aye. President Robinette,
Aye. Okay, motion passes. Unanimous. All right. Could we have a motion for a recess before we take up the next two items, B and C? Well, I've been studying, if you can't tell. I'll make the motion that we take about a 10-minute recess. Any seconds? Thank you. Motion approved.
Yeah, okay. Staff report, public comment, and then I'll move.
Here we go. Ready to begin, and we are now on item 9B, and that would be consideration of resolution 052015, adopting revised bylaws, and to give the introduction, General Manager Gruber.
Thank you, Madam President. Again, as you had indicated, this is discussion regarding the changes to the bylaws, and I'm going to turn this over to District Counsel Tim Carmel, and he can talk a little bit about it and introduce it. And
well, I'm always prepared. Madam President, members of the board, I want to take it for a little bit. This is known as Return of the Bylaws, Volume 4. So it may be 5. Sorry. At the January meeting, you created an ad hoc bylaw committee consisting of Vice President Clift and Board Member Thompson. They've met, and they've done a wonderful job of revising the bylaws, simplifying them in large part. Those revised bylaws are in your packet both in red line format and attached to the resolution in a clean format. It's recommended that you discuss those revised bylaws, make any additional changes you deem necessary and appropriate, and then adopt that resolution establishing your new bylaws. And I'd like to turn that over to the ad hoc committee, who probably has a lot more to say about it.
Or maybe not, but maybe so.
I'll take it. I guess if you would turn to page 108, because that's the clean.
It is clean.
The clean one, rather than because the other one is hard to follow through. And then if you will reference 108 and page 85 at the same time, if you can.
Well, let's try that.
I think we can do that.
We're multitasking here.
That's why we have binders.
The committee met, and one of the things the committee was, we took a look at the items that were presented to us by other board members and tried to incorporate those suggestions where we could into it. And we took a look at the suggestions by our legal counsel as to what is state law and regulation and such. Quite honestly, it comes out that almost everything is covered in state law, regulation, and such, and that is the reason for, on page 108, the compliance with federal or state law to start this off, which basically is saying that it's our intention to comply with all federal and state laws and regulations governing the performance of our duties as a director. However, we did feel that it is important to highlight items within the state law and to make interpretations as to the way that they might apply to us. So the first, on page 108, the first 1 through 4, the items 1.1 through 1.4 are simple statements of the board officers. We added 1.5 and 1.6 because it clarified the duties of the president more specifically. On section 2, we basically eliminated a whole bunch of the previous items simply because they were very direct statements of law, and they were required to meet those things anyway. Section 3, we added somewhat. We removed the 20-minute, which was in our bylaws, and I noticed we used 30 minutes on our agenda, and we just left it out because we believe that that is really a function of the president in putting forth the agenda for that meeting as to what amount of time that would be involved. There's some editing on 4.1. A lot of the editing was just shortening it down. As an example, 4.1, the minutes of the board should be kept by the district clerk. We didn't think it was necessary to say that she has to keep them in a clean cabinet, filed A through Z. It's her duty to.
She's the one that has to go find them.
To maintain them. We're just simply stating duty there. So that we took out a lot of examples type of things. Like on section 5, we hope that all board members will do their homework. We don't need to tell you to do that. Section 6 was renumbered because it started with 6.2 and it relates to the board's responsibility, and we did some changing there because, let me go back to 6.2 here and go through it. We did some editing just to simplify it. And then in 6.3 and 7.7 on the old one, we combined them together in one place to say what the primary responsibilities of the board are. That the board's responsibility is the formulation and evaluation of policy, monitoring the CCSD's progress in attaining its goals and objectives, and appointment of a general manager to run the routine manners of the district. So it was very specific of listing them. Section 7 was condensed a little bit. And basically called to attention that it is the general manager is responsible for the operation of the district, and that it is our responsibility to listen to our constituents and listen to individuals, but to refer the matter to the general manager for resolution. The original one had general manager or district clerk. Again, district clerk is an employee of the general manager, and so we didn't feel that the board should be directing the district clerk to do. We should be directing the general manager to maybe direct the district clerk to do something. So it was a matter of maintaining control there. Going back and forth. Number 8 was unchanged. However, we messed up here by not including two items. That there was a request for us to discuss the director's compensation, and that is a policy issue of the board, and we didn't want to deal with it as a recommendation, but has left it open for discussion between the board members as to what the compensation of a board member should be. There was also a request that fell within that compensation, which was to make the district's health insurance policy available to board members. Again, we felt that was a policy issue of the board, which could be dealt with probably as an agendized item later on to decide both the compensation and that issue if it was decided to do it. Under committees, there was basically the same, a little bit of minor editing on that. We took out a bunch of sections. The board review policy is basically the same. We took out a bunch of sections simply because they really are covered totally by state law. The correspondence, conflict of interest is stated in state law, and you have to go through classes on that anyhow. Evaluations, we didn't believe that should be in the bylaws because that's in the contracts of our people. In other words, the evaluation of the general manager is a contractual obligation that's part of his contract. And continuing education, we're required to maintain certain continuing education, so didn't see a need to state that in the bylaws. Other than that, being an ad hoc committee, we are hoping that you will accept them and we will die.
Will be finished for the moment.
As a committee.
Okay, thank you very much for the introduction and report. Did you want to add to that, Director Thompson?
I just wanted to say that it was a pleasure working with Director Clift on this and finishing the job. He did a good job of laying the framework for it and putting forth the changes and suggestions that we made. So I would fully concur with his recommendation, and I assume he's going to move approval, and so I'll let him do that.
Thank you very, very much. Just before we go to public comment, then, are there any clarifications for right now from the board? Seeing none, we will move to public comment, and we have Elizabeth Bettenhausen on 9B at this time.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I would like only to raise a quick issue. As I said before, I think it's a marvelously terse version of the bylaws, and I'm sure that all of you feel morally obliged to read the state laws about Community Services District at least once every 3 or 4 months so that you're familiar with what you are bound by under state law. I know that some of us in the public look at that rather frequently because it's interesting legal language, but also I think we're sovereigns, so we tend to exercise our responsibility as the sovereigns insofar as we are able to do so. I would like to ask you, though, even though it is only a suggestion in state law does say that you might have reasonable regulations regarding the public comment periods of your agendas. And I think that it would be very helpful if you would place on in a future agenda, and I have actually requested of the Vice President and Madam President that they do so, place on on an agenda of your coming meeting the philosophy of you that you hold regarding public comment. You know, because you read state law regularly, that according to state law, when there is public comment on issues that are not on the agenda, you may comment on that before the other agenda items begin. You have that authority, and as a sovereign, I look at it also as your responsibility. But you did not respond to my letter as directors about that. I certainly have perused the letter from the legal counsel. I don't know who asked him to write that. But on the other hand, it was legalese in a fascinating fashion as well. But I want to know your philosophy, friends. What is your philosophy about public comment and your response to it? I think you owe us that. Please place on an agenda so that we have your discussion of what you think you should do when you hear public comment. And I would like also to have a refreshing reminder every time that one of you does review public law in California about your obligations. I think if you refer to that, you would refresh our confidence that you are following state law just like you want to follow county law for dog leashes. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry. Then, at this time, I would like to invite a motion.
I move adoption of Resolution 05215, adopting revised bylaws as they appear in Exhibit A.
Okay, it has been then moved and seconded that we adopt these bylaws as submitted. Discussion? Board discussion?
I have some.
Director Rice?
Madam President, thank you, Directors Clift and Thompson, for working on this. I appreciate it, and I'm very glad to see that it's pared down, and the terseness of it only would concern me if I thought that there was a chance we weren't going to be following up with some kind of board policy manual, because that's the reason why these bylaws were so extensive. They included a lot of policies about how we approach some things as a board and in interacting with the public. And I do think that there's a distinction between what should be in bylaws and really what kind of things should be in board policies. Board policies would be things like, do we do evaluation of the general manager, even though it's in his contract? It doesn't need to be in the bylaws, but that doesn't mean that we don't want to make sure that that policy is clear for going forward, because the policy manual would give this board things like, we have trainings that we have to do. Because when you first joined the board, I don't know about the rest of you, but my training consisted of being handed a binder that I was asked if there had any questions. Well, having no policy manual and having bylaws that are this brief, I like the bylaws being very brief and to the point. I would like also us to be looking at, and we have a lot going on, but I do think that it would be beneficial for the current board as well as anybody in the future if there were some sort of policy manual that included a lot of these types of things, including like the appropriateness of when you appear at another agency's meeting, if you're not officially approved to do that, then you shouldn't be speaking for the board as a whole, and other different policies about what's appropriate for board members to be doing. So that's, and there are several that are available. In fact, there was just on the, I don't know what it's called, the CSDA thread that does somebody just had asked about board policies, if they had a board policy manual. And there are a lot of good resources, so we wouldn't even have to reinvent the wheel. The wheel's already out there. We could do something pretty quickly and simply, but it would give us all some good, solid guidelines, and then when somebody feels like somebody's gone outside the box of what is appropriate for our board, we can go, well, here's the policies of the board about how board members should be doing our jobs. Routine operations. I know this. English teacher, sorry. The daily business or the daily operations. I mean, it's not routine. That kind of, to me, that says, okay, if it's not a routine operation because it's an emergency, does that mean somebody else is in charge of it? I just kind of, the day-to-day operations makes more sense to me, and I kind of the routine operation part, because I don't think anything Jerry does is routine, frankly. I think he does a great job at his job, and he runs the day-to-day operations, some of which is more boring than others. But that's more what he's doing to me. I would like to see the mission statement at the start of this instead of like, we're going to follow all these state laws. Let's make that like the end of, like one of those end things at the end of the thing instead of that we're going to follow all the state law. Why don't we have our mission statement at the head of this? And I don't even know where I would find, frankly, the mission statement. I wasn't able to find it. It didn't look very hard, but it seems to me that would be a good way to be starting out something like this, the bylaws. I know that the North Coast Advisory Council bylaws start out with their mission statement. A lot of other bylaws I've looked at do also. And none of this, I do want you to know that this isn't, I do have a lot of suggestions and some changes I'd like to see, but that doesn't mean that I don't think that there was a good job done here. I just don't, there's a few other little things that, one of the things that I would like to see, what I think we should do is we should be doing these every other year, and we should be doing it in a non-election year. So in the years when there isn't an election is when we should do it, and we should be doing it in the fall before we actually have a change of officers, because if there's any change to the bylaws, like this set of bylaws changes what the what the prior bylaws have said, that the president, the difference between the president and the rest of the board is the president runs the meetings, and there isn't really a distinction of duties there, and the president does have the prerogative to do things because they're setting up the agenda and they're working with the general manager and as part of the executive committee. And this is any president, doesn't matter. I'm not even, it's not about people, it's about the position to me. That it's this, the 1.5 and 1.6. 1.6 I object to because I think the president doesn't make the appointments. I think that we all have to agree that those are the appointments, and that concerns me only in the sense that I don't want to be, hopefully at some point I will be in the chair to be president, and I don't think that it's appropriate for a single board member to ever be able to make unilateral decisions on behalf of the board or anybody or on behalf of the district. And so that's why those two particular ones concern me. It is the prerogative of the president to speak on behalf of the board on issues that have already been settled, but a board member could go out, a board president could go out and if they're speaking because of the way that this is written, could go out and be a spokesperson for the board on issues that we haven't made decisions on issues that may be still controversial or we haven't made a formal policy on. So I hesitate on those two particular points. So what I would like to see change, these are the changes. One little minor word change from routine operations to day-to-day. I would love to see us actually either transform the current ad hoc bylaws committee or create a new policy committee so that we have a policy manual. We can work on something like that. I'd like to see it done every other year instead of every year. It takes a lot of staff time, even if we aren't making major changes. Why are we bothering every single year? Every other year seems like it would be frequent enough. If anybody can think of a rationale to do it every single year, be my guest. I'm willing to do it every year, but otherwise it seems to me in an often election year and in the fall instead of right after somebody's a brand new president. I mean, because if we're changing the rules right now on Gail, and she had a certain expectation going into the job as president, and whereas if going into the job as president with bylaws already approved ahead of time might have been given her a better sense of what it was that the board is looking at. So those are my comments and thoughts. Oh, and policy, the 1.5 and 1.6. I don't think that those are. I think those are policy issues that we should put into a policy manual. I don't like the fact that they're in the bylaws, and I would say we should strike them from the bylaws.
Madam President?
Yes, Vice President Cliff?
Let's take the easy one first. On page 110, item 6.3, item C, appointment of the general manager to handle all, just cross out the word routine.
Routine, right. I was going to say that.
All matters concerning the operational aspects of the CCSD.
Where are you on that, Merle?
Thank you.
Okay?
6.3.
And then as to items 1.5 and 1.6, 1.5 is it just indicating that the president is the spokesperson for the board, which would mean the board had made some kinds of decisions. I don't think, hopefully there was no intention here to stifle the speech of any individual board member expressing their own opinion. This was just that for official items of the board, the president is the spokesperson.
I don't agree with that policy.
And I don't know whether I'm not really interested in another meeting. And the president shall make appointments to all committees subject to board approval. My intent and purpose there was simply that we're giving the obligation to the president to get the names together, that they're not having individual ability to make decisions without.
And those two items could easily fall into a policy manual once we have one put together.
That's true. And as to it being every 2 years, I understand that, but at the same time, should there be a situation that occurs in which control of the board changed to some other group that had a different perspective than the existing board, I'm not in favor of strapping future board members.
I don't think, I would not suggest that we couldn't approve it, we couldn't go back and revise except on that 2-year cycle, but that on a 2-year cycle, a regular review of them on a 2-year cycle is what I'm asking for, versus we're only allowed to do it on every 2 years, was kind of my thinking, because this is kind of, what's in there right now is like a routine review of it to see if there's anything that needs to be changed, versus, which is we do need to be doing, but I don't think we need to do it annually. If somebody wants to change, if the board, control of the board changes and the attitude of the board changes and they want to make changes, they can put it on the agenda.
Let's see if we can come to an agreement there, but maybe on page 111 on item 10.1, subject to 3.1, the board bylaws, instead of using shall be reviewed annually, I'm trying to think of words that might say something like the board it is contemplated the board bylaws will be reviewed semi-annually. You know, it's kind of not a mandatory thing. It is.
How about may be reviewed as needed instead of sitting at the first meeting and yada yada?
I don't want to eliminate the review altogether. It just seems that a routine review seems annually.
So it shall be reviewed annually if needed?
I like it. I like it, yeah. I like it, yeah.
I
like it the way it is, because really we shouldn't go hash this through.
I don't have a problem with leaving it annual. That was just
leave it
a
annual,
request.
and next time it's
like that's fine
5 minutes.
So as the maker of the motion, I would recommend that we, on that one point on 6.3, section C, we remove the word routine.
And there's another item on 7.
Just I need to recognize whoever's speaking at this point.
I'm sorry,
First.
President. There's another.
Yes.
First of all, then, Vice President Clift, are you finished with that response?
Yeah.
Okay. And then any other comments or discussion?
Yes, Madam President.
Director Rice.
There's a second routine operations in 7.2 on that same page. If you would not mind striking routine under 7.2. It's the second line. If you have no objection to that.
It seems consistent with what you just said.
Yeah.
On the one that you struck.
Okay.
There's another routine, mention of routine.
Second line.
We'll just make them all consistent.
7.2.
Ooh, I missed a big one. I need a
take it
program
out
that
the
does
routine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Madam President.
Just let's let him finish.
You got it.
Take
Let him
out the
finish.
word routine.
Okay?
Okay, we as the maker of the motion, I would amend it to remove the word routine from item 7.2 and 6.3C.
And I'll accept the changes.
Okay, further discussion?
Routine, you're now Superman, officially.
Nothing's routine. It never has been routine, has it?
Not since he joined, right?
No, I don't think there's any routine. Okay, any other discussion?
Yes, Madam President.
Would this be the time that we could change $75 to $100 without having another rule? I mean, do we have to have another discussion about that? In 2008, because the economy was going down the drain, the board went from $100 to $75 as a show of strength or something. And the healthcare district, everybody, all the boards in general are at $100 per meeting. I think it would be a nice opportunity for just to make a pen and ink change real quick on that. I feel that you didn't feel as an ad hoc committee the authority to do so, but now that we're in full session, we can discuss it. I would wonder what my other colleagues would think.
And what would they think?
I will tell you my opinion. I don't see any reason for a change.
Okay.
Director Rice?
When I first joined this board, I did the calculations to figure out, because that $100 is a state statute, $100. It's been $100 since 1955. If we actually had any cost of living increases or any kind of inflationary recognition in the state statute, it would be somewhere around $450 per meeting if it had kept up with the prices. I think that extra $25 over 5 of us over a year is really not that much, and I haven't filed for my hours or my days of service in the last 2 months because I haven't had more than 2 or 3. Since we have all ad hoc committees and there's fewer opportunities, even though we can only max out at 6 days of service for pay, I haven't even been able to get up to 3 or 4. So I think the extra $25 to take into consideration all the time that we do spend on district business. Now, granted, I put in a lot of time, and that's voluntary, and I don't need to get paid for all of that. But I think in consideration of the extra hours that are put in by all of us to read the board packets, to talk to constituents, an extra $25 per day of official service when we're providing service all the time seems like not that big a deal.
Yeah, maybe it should be $4 an hour, whichever's greater.
Well, yeah, because it's definitely less than minimum wage. But I think that agendizing it might be the right way to go. But I'm either way. I think that it's an appropriate change to be making. Whether we do it now or not is.
I would suggest it be an agendized item because the public might want to weigh in.
I have no problem with that.
Great, I'm all for it. So,
I agree with that too. I think the public might want to weigh in, and I think we would all want to really think about it further.
Yep.
Okay.
The last, Madam President.
Director Rice? And we do want to keep to our 15 minutes if we can, so we need to move along. But please go ahead.
We are going to be moving along. Is not PROS a standing committee of this board that should be included as part of the committees in the bylaws?
They change every year.
But it's not. That's a standing committee. They publish agendas.
Right.
PROS is a standing committee.
So shouldn't it be
It's covered
noted in the bylaws that there is a standing committee?
It's covered in 9.4.
Yeah, if it is covered that the standing committees can be appointed and they will act in certain ways. I don't know, if you say PROS is the only standing committee or standing committee, you'd have to change the bylaws every time you wanted to have a separate.
I'm not so sure it's a standing committee. I mean,
it is.
It's a commission.
But
But it is in place. It is standing, and it is public.
It's acting as under the authority of this board, right?
Right.
Yes.
And so it has to be probably a committee of this board.
It is a committee of this board.
Right.
You created it.
We created it.
So kind of what you're saying is that the fact that it's not called out in the bylaws is not problematic.
I don't think it's problematic because we have the authority to appoint standing committees, and they have to act in a certain manner.
Okay.
Which that one does. All right?
Yeah. The only thing stopping me from voting yes on these right now is the 1.5 and 1.6. I don't agree with having those in there. I understand the reason that you've explained the rationale thoroughly to me, and I just don't. I think even if I were acting as president right now, I think I would just not like. I think it's important that we all look at ourselves as being equals, because we are. No
I think
can act on
we've heard you on this. Yes, you have shared this with us. On that, I would say on 1.6, my understanding when you first mentioned this was that the president shall make appointments of all committees, and then you said, I don't think that person should have that authority, and actually...
Oh, he added the right.
No, but it's right here in writing. It's always been right in writing, if you read it. Under 1.6. It wasn't added today.
I'm just
on page 108.
Right. This is right. These are the new ones, right? And it says subject to board approval, which I don't have a.
That's what I thought you had asked for, but it's included.
Okay, then I'm wrong. Then their explanation was because it was the express responsibilities of the president. So yeah, I don't have a problem with 1.6.
Okay, very good. Any further discussion?
But 1.5 I still have a problem with. But if the board majority is going with that, I'm fine with going in that direction. I'm not comfortable with it in that way.
We understand and hear that. Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, then I think we are ready for the question. So, the bylaws as have been moved and amended and now ready for a vote. Let's have to approve now with the amendments. Let's have a roll call vote, please.
Vice President Cliff?
Aye.
Director Thompson? Aye. Director Berenger?
Aye.
Director Rice?
Aye.
President Robinette?
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you.
May I?
I have been waiting on my comments too, if I may. I want to first of all thank the bylaws are quite a task, and I think that you were thoughtful about your work. I think that you certainly have made them very succinct and focused on the points and beyond the state law and statutes that we follow, and so I appreciate the effort and the time and the timeliness with your report. Thank you.
And I'll bet you if you look at them 10 years from now, they will be expanded with examples on each one of the items, because that's the way it works.
Not if we put together a policy manual.
You pare everything down. Well, yeah, okay, maybe there's a bigger policy manual. But that's the most common thing. You pare everything down, and then the lawyers bring you up an individual case, and you have to then put in each.
So it's really all the fault of the lawyers, isn't it? Absolutely. Yeah, I suppose that's what it is. Okay, are we ready to move on to 9C?
Before we move on to the next item, I just wanted to try and gain consensus if there was any interest in doing something like a policy manual to cover some of these things so that they're clear. Because I'm good with following rules and I'm good with following policies, but if they're not written, then they can easily be modified on the fly in ways that may not suit the full board. That's all.
It's not something we could take action on. I don't believe it's not on the agenda. Legal counsel?
That's correct. It's not on the agenda. You could consider it on a future agenda item.
We could put it as a future item. Okay. All right. We are ready then for item 9C and General Manager you're going to probably turn it over to the budget, finance.
I will, but I'm going to just thank you, Madam President. I'm just going to take a few minutes to thank Patrick. Some of my thoughts are, the board has indicated that they would like some more information on the budget. Just really quick, if you start on page 118 and you peruse through those, you'll see the individual departments and the expenditures for each line. Whether we continue to provide this information to the board or put it on the website is really based on the board's direction. Patrick and I worked on putting this mid-year budget together in the staff report. I guess if I had to summarize everything, considering what we've gone through as far as the stage 3 and the impact it's had on the revenues, overall, I think we're doing considerably pretty good, and we continue to get things done from an infrastructure perspective, which is really key. Even though money's tight right now, if you look at my general manager's report, we continue to chip away at things like pumps and motors and wells and lift stations, and so it's not a stagnant budget. But real quick, I'll just go over a few points and then I'll turn it over to Patrick. Put a PowerPoint presentation together, and then we'll bring it back to the board for any questions you may have. The recommendation is that the Board of Directors receive a staff presentation on the proposed amendments to the fiscal year 2014-15 budget, discuss and consider the proposed amendments to the fiscal year 2014-2015 budget, and adopt a resolution 042015 approving amendments to the CCSD fiscal year 2014 budget. The fiscal impact, the proposed amendments to the fiscal year 2014-15 budget would authorize total revenue projections, expenditure authorities, and changes to the general fund, water fund, wastewater fund, and emergency water supply project. Just really quick, fire department, on the bottom of page 112, staff is not recommending any changes to their revenue, but it's recommending that expenditures be increased by $17,617, which will bring the total deficit budget to $17,633. Again, we put explanations why these are being requested. And we can even go into more detail with supporting documentation on these figures, but what we did on each item is we just included what we thought were the major points and why we have some deficits. Staff facilities and resources on the top of page 113. Staff recommends decreasing the total budget revenue to the Facilities and Resources Department by $4,663 and decreasing the total budget expenditures by $12,515. Parks and Recreation Department, see attachment A. Staff is not recommending any changes to Park and Recreation Department, although there will be an item that we did not include in here as far as one of the goals that the Budget Committee did discuss, and we inadvertently forgot to put the goal of making improvements to the East Ranch into here. One of the things that I really want to just bring to attention, not to pat ourselves on the back, but the administrative department, attachment A, page 7, staff recommends increasing total budget revenues for the administration department by $3,501 and increasing the budget expenditures by $85,442. We have a surplus in that department. It's the only department that has a surplus of $88,543. Water fund, staff recommends decreasing the total budget revenues for the water department by $142,058 and increasing the total budget expenditures by $34,421, which will increase the budgeted deficit by $176,000, basically to $222,000. I touched briefly on why we have those deficits in this staff report. Wastewater fund, staff recommends increasing the total budget revenue for wastewater funds by $66,057 while also increasing total budget expenditure for the fund by $137,000. Santa Rosa Creek emergency water supply, which is a separate budget item altogether. Staff recommends increasing the total budget revenue of the Santa Rosa Creek emergency water supply project by $307,876 because the district has been awarded a public works system drought relief grant in that amount. Top of page 114, San Simeon Creek Emergency Water Supply Project. Staff recommends increasing total budgeted revenues to the San Simeon Creek Emergency Water Supply Project by Project 2, not by, sorry, once you're falling out of your chair here. Project to $13,321,256, and reflecting the loan already received by the Proposition 84 drought grant that has been approved. San Simeon Creek Emergency Water Supply Project. Staff recommends increasing the budget for the total expenditure of $11,985,193. This amount includes all original development and construction cost. And then the San Simeon Creek ongoing operations, staff recommends reducing total budget revenue for San Simeon Creek operating cost to $807,000. Ongoing additional revenues were implemented to pay the additional cost of operating the plant and to pay the debt service for the loan obtained in development and build the project. I'm going to turn it over to Patrick, and he's going to give a brief presentation, and we can answer any questions at that time, or I'm sure you have plenty of them. But Patrick, if you would, thanks.
Here we go. We're going to talk briefly about the four areas: the general fund, water fund, wastewater fund, and the EWS project. The general fund, up here I'm showing the existing budget authority and the proposed budget authority. So in the general fund, we go from a deficit of $14,000 to a surplus of $63,000. The water fund, a deficit of $45,000 to a deficit of $222,000, and the wastewater fund, $117,000 to $189,000. In the general fund, this shows fire, facilities and resources, park, rec, and admin with the total at the right-hand side. And Jerry just went through these, so I'm not going to spend much time on them. Fire department deficit is projected deficit is $17,633. I think Jerry said it a couple of times, but he and I sat down with each department head and looked at each line item. We've done that twice now, and we're projecting with fairly good confidence what we're going to be able to spend in most areas, the exception being maintenance. You know, if something breaks, we're going to have to fix it. But other than that, we're fairly confident with these projected figures for the rest of the year. There we go. Park and rec, no change. Admin, these are highlights. It's hard to read. We've reduced salaries because of vacancies earlier in the year, and we have permanent reductions in staffing currently. It shows you the primary areas where we pay membership dues. That's gone up substantially, but they're pretty much unavoidable costs. Government fees, also LAFCO's $27,000 a year. And we pay property taxes on property that we own that we don't use for public purposes. And that's costing us $3,000 a year right now. And we have a slight increase in legal fees. Water fund highlights. The deficit has increased substantially, primarily, or in large part, due to the $117,000 you approved today for starting work on the Fiscalini tank. That's included in this budget. Our water sales, we're still developing methodology for predicting water sales, but we think they're going to be a little less than what we budgeted. On the other hand, water penalties are going to be a little more than what we budgeted, so the net effect is not substantial when you offset those two against each other. The rest of that, when we started having to provide porta potties in town, we stopped doing the rebate program to pay for that. And so that's why the rebate program won't be as expensive as we had budgeted, because we're using those funds to pay for porta potties, which were also not budgeted. So it was an offset item. I'm trying. Why is this not going? It's not letting me back up. That is. Okay. One back. Okay. Wastewater, we've increased the deficit to $189,000. We actually, when we did the budget last May, we made projections for revenues, and they were slightly under in wastewater revenue, so we're able to increase the budgeted revenue in wastewater. It's still substantially less than what it was the prior year, but it's just more than what we had budgeted this year. Salaries are reduced because we've had vacancies in the wastewater facility. Lift station maintenance has gone up by $11,000, and then we had some repairs to vehicles that were unanticipated. Government fees, we pay substantial operating permits and annual tipping fees. The annual tipping fees to the county, the operating permits to SWRCB. Utilities were just not budgeted properly in the first place. We're only going to be about 12 or 13,000 higher than we were last year. For some reason, we sort of arbitrarily cut that budget when we shouldn't have. Sludge disposal, we just didn't include it in the budget this year. It was an oversight. And the rest are up there. Okay, the emergency water supply project, there's two areas, Santa Rosa Creek and San Simeon Creek. This is smaller than I thought it would be, but basically we're now reflecting that we'll get a $307,000 grant, and we have $194,000 in expenditures. We spent all of it except we need to spend another $40,000 to replace some media in there. So the net deficit is going to be about $86,000 for the year. On San Simeon Creek, this is a summary. Projected one-time revenues about $13 million. Projected one-time expenditures about $12 million, so that we are projecting that we're going to have $1.3 million left over at the end of the project. The revenues, we have two sources, the loan for $8.9 million and the grant for $4.3 million. The original task orders were budgeted at $2.74 million, and expenditures are exactly the same. The design build contract was for $6.3 million or $6.6 million. We have about $600,000 in change orders for a total of, I'm sorry, I can't even read this, $6.8 million. Next time I'll make a bigger slides. But it's about $645,000 in change orders, which is about 9.7% of the project cost. These are general costs other than CDM Smith, and these are startup expenditures, which are in line with the budget, and then these are ongoing revenues and expenditures. And I apologize, they're too small to see on the screen, but you have them in your staff report. That's it.
Okay. Before we go into discussion from the board, we have public comment, and are we at a place where we want? You've made the presentation, both of you now. You're ready? Okay, and thank you for coming forward. From Elizabeth Bettenhausen, public comment.
Thank you, Madam President. Elizabeth Bettenhausen, who lives here, or did earlier in the day, anyhow. I know that you are doing a mid-year update on your fiscal year 14-15, so I want to keep that in my mind. But I have three major questions. I hope that if you let me understand this. If this budget that you will receive, and I approve, I don't know what you do with it, that means that there will be no, in this fiscal year, as of July 1, there will have been no prepayment on the loan for the emergency water treatment plant. That's implied in here. And if that's the case, I think that should be really made very clear to the public, that the $4,382,256 grant that you received will not be used in this fiscal year, any of it, to prepay on the loan. The second thing I'd like to check, and that's on page 132, you know where that is. Page 130, if you would look at that, please. Page 130 of this, and I'm sorry if this is not very clear because I only had time to read this today, even though it came out Monday. If you would look on page 130, it says that the ongoing expenditures collected, which is an interesting way to phrase it, will be approximately a third of $1,000,000 for the water treatment plant. This is not the one-time expenditures to get the thing set up and running. This is then the ongoing expenditures will be about a third of $1,000,000. Now, that's at the bottom there where it says projected ongoing expenditures collected through June 30th. But if you look at page 136 to compare, you will see that the ongoing expenditure streams have $0 in them. I don't know how you're going to make sense of that, but I just raise it as an issue because there's nowhere in here does it say anything about the projection, how the projections for ongoing expenditures have been made. And as you recall, certainly there were several of us who over the past months have suggested that you might really want to put that in hard dollar speculations with criteria on how you are going to spend the money for the ongoing operations. So it's not there now. And the third thing I want to raise is on page 134. I'm sure I could raise 96 million things, but I give you the gracious assurance I will not do that. Page 134, there is in the middle there on regular coastal development permit, a future mitigation measures cost of $1 million. That's interesting.
Finish.
How did you get that number? I thought it was going to be $786,432.26, but you came up with $1 million, or the staff did. So I just raised it for your attention.
Thank you. Okay, and a response?
Sure.
To the questions.
Right. It's true that there is no plan at this time to repay any of the loan prior to July the 1st. When you were talking about the ongoing expenditures on page 136, it shows there the $326,000, that they're not all zeros. There is a $326,000 amount there, and that was for debt service paid, and that is an ongoing expenditure. That will happen every year, twice a year.
Ma'am, just because this is new.
No, but I do want him to respond to your questions from public comment as requested.
And the $1 million question, I can't respond to that.
Do you want to restate? Do you want her to restate the questions? Do you want her to restate the questions?
Let me answer the $1 million question. I've always wanted to say that.
$1 million question, okay.
and I can get some help from the budget committee too, Director Cliff on this. So we do not know what the future holds as far as future mitigation for this project. We do not know what the future holds as far as potential or existing litigation. So there's a lot of unknowns. If you look at the change orders, which come to about 9.27% or something like that, though the overwhelming majority of those were driven by environmental mitigation measures required of us by the regulatory agencies, frog fence, gopher barriers, things like that. So it's a number that is set aside. It could be lessened. It could be more. Whatever the board decides for us to do. I guess from a precautionary or a cautious standpoint, it represents being able to achieve which is one of the goals of the board, is a regular coastal development permit. And so that's what that $1 million is. But attached with that figure is a great deal of unknowns, a great deal of variables that we may not know, from a regulatory standpoint, from a mitigation standpoint, from a legal standpoint, those things. So, Director Cliff, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, the other aspect is there's a nexus to that money that has to be used for emergency, for the water treatment. Still, it can't be funneled off to remodel a wastewater plant or something like that. So there are some things within the loan agreements and such that limit how the use is. The $1 million is an arbitrary figure, but it basically is set up to be conservative, to have money there. Now, the committee has also discussed alternatives, ways to get money back to the ratepayer if we're unable to meet that August 31st? August 15th date. So the Budget Committee has considered some alternatives to having a renegotiated loan by pay down, either pay down or a renegotiated loan. Renegotiated loan meaning the same length of time but a lower amount of the loan, so which would reduce the payments. So those are being discussed within committee, and also they felt it was prudent to make sure that there was money available to meet what has been regulatory obligations that had to be met. And I think you had some examples of. I think even we have to put a dechlorinator into that blending line because we had to put the blending line in. The blending line wasn't in the original deal, but the Regional Water Quality Control Board said you should have this, so we put that in, and now you have another step you have to do. So that's really what the purpose there is. I have another item that I want to discuss on this, if I can.
All right, go ahead.
Okay. It was alluded to here of change in the Parks and Recreation, and I want to make add an amendment to this. And for background, if you go back to page 15, which is in 6A, which is really the finance manager's report, and you see this, our old friend, General Fund Prop 1A, which is $159,286. That was set aside, and I'm going to say I didn't have time to get the exact date, but it was early in my career on this board, about 6 years ago. The reason it was set aside because Proposition 1A allowed the state to borrow the tax revenues of agencies throughout the state, and they borrowed from us about $160,000. They were to pay interest, and they were to pay it back within 3 years, but they also had the option to extend it for an additional 3 years, and there was concern at that particular time that they had the option to borrow again the next year. And so the California Special District Association, through their Finance Management Corporation, arranged for districts who wanted to sell that debt to the Finance Corporation, and we took the choice of selling the debt, in which, in effect, they got the interest when it was repaid. But the secondary step was a conservative step that said if we have to have this again the next year, we should have money set aside. Now, it's been set aside and set aside and set aside. And in fact, Proposition 1A's ability to borrow money has been rescinded. So, and that was done 4 years ago, I think. But we have kept this kind of set aside in a reserve. Now, that money is property tax money. It's not enterprise money. It's not from the water. It's not from deal. It's property tax money. Now, if you step over to the regular part here, and you think in terms of our obligation for the Fiscalini Ranch, the county put up $500,000 of parks money in the purchase of Fiscalini Ranch, with the stated obligation of us arranging for some form of active recreational community park. We have never done anything, and they've never asked for the money back. But thank God. But here is an opportunity, I think, where we can transfer money from this reserve account, transfer it to Parks and Recreation, and authorize the general manager to spend those funds on Phase 1 of the East Ranch Community Park. Now, Phase 1 is the partial development of the parking lot, the restrooms, the trails, and the swells to catch runoff water. Now, what that would mean is that and that Phase 1 has an estimated cost of about $154,000. So what we could do is transfer money from one account over to Parks and Recreation, and then restrict it from the standpoint of saying they have to spend it on that park development. That would give us the total infrastructure for the park, and then that would allow the dog park people to move into the dog park facility area. That would allow us to solicit from Rotary and Kiwanis and Lions clubs and everything else, picnic tables and things for the picnic area, and the soccer moms and the Little League baseball players are already willing to do a lot of the work on their area. But they can't do anything until we meet the infrastructure needs. And I think here's an opportunity for us to use money that we just have to sit there and move it over and have a beneficial use to meet our obligation to the county and such. And so whatever we do, and if we adopt this resolution, I would also adopt an amendment that says we transfer the $159,286 of the Proposition 1A money to Parks and Recreation, and authorize the general manager to spend funds on Phase 1 of the East Ranch Community Park.
I'd second that as part of our discussion, if that's...
Thank you.
Is that legal, Madam Chair?
I don't know. We're just throwing it out there. I'm just supporting the potential change.
I didn't make that
right.
a motion.
It's not a motion.
Haven't made it as a motion yet.
Letting you know that
But you're ready to go when?
Yeah.
All right.
I'm just saying, because the recommendations here is to discuss and consider proposed amendments to the budget. I'm saying this is a proposed amendment in addition to the ones the staff have made.
Mm-hmm.
Is that okay, Mr.
Yes.
Attorney?
Oh, no, that's perfectly within the description.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, so you're making the motion now?
No, okay. Let's do it this way. I would move that we.
You need. We've had presentation. We've had public comment. We are ready for a motion.
Okay, I would move that we adopt Resolution 04-2015, approving amendments to the CCSD budget for fiscal year 14-15, and include amendment to transfer Proposition 1A reserve funds to the Parks and Recreation Department, and authorize the general manager to spend funds only on Phase 1 of the East West Ranch Community Park.
And I would second that.
And Madam President, I must interfere as a sovereign member of this group. You never gave the public an opportunity to address this amendment.
Would you like to do a public comment forum?
No, I would like members of the public to know that this is the specific amendment being made, because this item has been misinterpreted according to the county requirement. I'm sorry, this should be an opportunity for pros to come in, for people who have a certain understanding of the East Ranch protection to come in and talk about this amendment. But all of a sudden, we are moving ahead on the development of the East Ranch without any notice to the public that this would be on the agenda. I grant the legal interpretation, amendments is there. But that means that if you have any concern about anything in Cambria, you should show up at this meeting, which is not really quite fair to us public.
Madam President?
Yes.
Actually, that's an accurate statement. If you have any concern about any budgeting in the community and any budgeting amendments, you should be here. This, of course, is not the project itself. It's an allocation of funding for the project. And the project itself will come back so that the public will have a chance to weigh in and
This is my interpretation, too. We have, with the community park, we have gone through many phases now with David Foote on what's the first steps. We started some less expensive first steps last year. We are now into an ad hoc that's addressing this and will, in fact, come up with a report. But there's no point in having an ad hoc if you have no funding to go anywhere.
Madam President, and this is also consistent with the goals that have been adopted by the PROS Commission and also this board. I think an opportunity to comment when the board adopted the goals, specifically recognizing that one of those goals was to move forward with the development of the East Ranch. The presentation that was provided to David Foote by David Foote of FIRMA was part of a PROS Commission meeting. That's an open meeting. So I think we've been really transparent about, as District Council indicated. As District Council indicated, all this is an appropriation of funds. The terms of the contract and the work will have to come back for the board for additional deliberation. So.
I think all we're doing here is providing the funding available so that PROS now can begin to discuss what it's going to be and bring it back. We're not saying it's specific. We're just simply providing funding for them to do that.
And the ad hoc committee can now actually have legitimate work with funding to work with PROS to then bring updates back to this board. Any further discussion on the budget overall that was presented today?
Yes, I do.
Director Rice?
Thank you, Madam President. Firstly, I do agree that the set-aside that we did for the 1A is no longer, for lots of reasons, including the fact that it's irrelevant right now to have that set aside. I hesitate to do so because we don't have any restricted reserves right now, and we have zero reserve policy, and I haven't even seen it come near a place to put on the agenda yet. Without a reserve policy, we just spend money right and left. This may be a perfectly great use for it. I think that going forward on it as a board goal is something that this board approved last month. I also think that spending money out of a reserve account while we have it is not a bad thing, but it also means that we have, then if we run into a different emergency, and we haven't said anything yet about, that's to say nothing of the money that's coming in for grant funding under the larger grant, and how that'll be addressed and paid back. So that brings up that issue that we need to be having a reserve policy and whether that's an appropriate thing to do. I think it was a strong move at the time to set it aside. I think it's a strong move for us to have some kind of actual reserve that's set aside just in case of emergency, because we do have, fortunately for this district, we do have some extra funds that essentially are there to help back us up when we need it, like we had the extra money for this emergency project, so that we could put out money before we got any loan or grant to get started on it. We don't want to end up in a situation like that again, and you never know what might come forward. I mean, we don't know. We already know there's issues we have to deal with the wastewater treatment plant. Heaven forfend if something were to happen and we don't have any money left in that account because we're working on another project and because that money's restricted. That's the concern I have. I'm not against spending the money on the park and meeting that goal. I want to make sure that we remember that what we're doing is things that there's no overarching policy that says this is what is important to this board. What is important to this board is what we're doing. I don't like the fact that we're doing it without any specific reserve policy. The other question I had, so would that go into the Parks and Recreation part of the budget, or does that go into the facilities part of the budget?
I would say facilities.
Facilities or Parks and Rec?
Yeah, it's a good question.
For the park, for the East Ranch Park improvements, is that part of the Parks and Rec budget or part of the Facilities and Resources budget?
I believe the amendment to the budget and the motion was to put it in the Parks and Rec.
And then will that 19,000 that's currently there be able to provide the kind of maintenance, or we're probably not going to be in the same budget year for that? Is that what we're talking about?
Which 19,000 are you referring to?
For the Parks and Rec that's currently in the Parks and Rec budget is currently.
That amount is usually for small projects that the Parks and Recreation Commission want to do, such as signage, or if they want to attend classes or something like that. So it's historically been a really small budget for Parks and Rec, and essentially what that is it's the proposed commission. And if one of their goals, for an example, is to improve signage or do maps or something like that. So, but to put it in the facilities, Carlos and myself, along with Monique from the administrative department, will be overseeing, the bid packages and the contracts and things like that. But to put it in facilities and resource, it would probably be better in Parks and Recs. That'd be my recommendation.
So this again raises the issue of why those two are separate out if there's not really a whole lot of reason to have them separate. I still think that having them combined, and that's a whole different discussion. So I'm going to
we start the budget process in March. We're going to start it early this year, Patrick and I, with the department managers. And believe it or not, the 2015-2016 budget is going to be here before we know it. So we're having a kickoff on March 1st, and we'll give the board a budget timetable for next fiscal year. But that's something that can be considered. If it's always been, it's not always, and it doesn't necessarily mean it's the right thing. We've always set some funds aside for the Parks and Rec Commission to be able to support their goals.
As well we should.
Yeah, and for them to attend training and things like that. And it's usually been a stipend or a relatively small amount of money.
Maybe we need to move the Vets Hall into the Parks and Rec part of the budget. I mean, I'm just saying that there's some distinction that needs to be made, it seems to me, about how that money is.
Well, my only concern here is that I would think that going to Parks and Recreation, it will be isolated and not be able to be funneled into other activities.
I don't have, and that's a perfectly good reason. I just never
later on,
had a good reason.
if you combine Parks and Recreation facilities, I don't have any particular problem one way or another. Or if you say once it's finished, it's now a facility.
And nothing to say that we shouldn't be setting extra money aside for the Vets Hall specifically, so that it becomes that it's protected money for Vets Hall use. I mean, this is a Veterans Memorial Hall. It needs to be maintained in a manner that shows respect for all of the veterans that it represents a memorial for. So, I mean, these are important policy issues going forward. I just want to move on to, I don't understand here, and I didn't notice it, otherwise I would have brought it up at the staff meeting that I had this week. When I'm looking at page 117, I'm seeing, and I'm looking at the clock too, I'm going to try and be as brief as possible. I'm seeing, I just answered my own question. Never mind. Okay, so different question. Different question. So the fire department budget and the facilities and resources and the Parks and Rec and the administration all come out of the general fund revenues, right? And general fund revenues primarily are for property taxes. There's some fees for the Vets Hall, small things, but primarily property taxes, yes. How do we determine what percentage goes to fire versus the other general fund expenditures?
I looked out just over the last 4 years, and roughly it's about 22%, between 20 and 22%, which is historically gone there. I don't know how that got started, and I'd like to be able to do that research before we come back with a budget for next year.
Okay, so we're going to see that for next year's budget. We'll have a more clear idea, because I would imagine that we could use virtually all of it in one or the other of those departments, but we need to make sure we're funding the fire department for things that the board has said as policy, like having the ALS on the vehicles,
and there are
and things that we need to make sure that we're tracking with the money, like unexpected overtime and why that's happening with the fire department. I just want to make sure that we're clear, because about $500,000 of this is specifically only for fire department.
And as I indicated in my general manager report, I think the ALS conversation needs additional dialogue, especially from a policy standpoint, because, and it doesn't mean that I'm saying I support it or don't support it, I think that we are still trying to, and I don't think we've had a good detailed enough explanation of what this really going to cost this district, not only in running the ALS, but from a salary perspective and also from an employment perspective and all those type of things. So originally when the ALS was supported by the board, if you remember, the staff report was brought and it said it was going to cost $7,000. Then I put a caveat in there. I said, we really don't have any idea what it's going to cost us, and we really don't at this point. But I can guarantee you it's going to be expensive. The other thing is, I would be cautious to say that we would take the overwhelming majority of property tax and allocate it for one department specifically. And the reason being is, I think at some point in time, from a policy standpoint, and I mentioned that in my general manager's report also, is that we need to look at a revenue source other than property tax, or at least a portion of property tax for the upkeep of the ranch. We continuously hear, and rightfully so, of the health of the forest. We purchased the ranch, and now the Facilities and Resource Department and the maintenance of that ranch is coming out of general funds in its entirety to the tune of about $519,000 a year. We have the ability to take general fund money, tax money, and use it for enterprise things such as wastewater improvements. We cannot take enterprise funds and use it for general funds. We can't do that. So those are part of the policy decisions that we need to engage in with the board. Real costs for fire service, real costs for ALS, real costs to maintain the ranch, future possible assessments on those type of things, and those types. So those are all big picture conversations we need to have.
Yeah, and it seems to me that those, Madam President, if I might, it seems to me that those particular policy questions are all part of what we could be doing if we were looking at what is the long-range plan for this district to be providing in terms of what's appropriate service, levels of service for water, what is appropriate, and what do we need to be tackling as far as providing service of wastewater treatment. What are the things that we want to make sure, and we need to be including the community in these conversations about, so what is it that we need to be doing to help manage the ranch, and what kind of money are we looking at in doing that, so that the community is aware that it's not just we stick up a sign and we say you're not allowed to take your dog off leash there, or that we have all of these other things going on with the ranch, that people are like, we spend money on doggy bags out there, but we don't.
If we could move it along, because
I'm going to. Yes, could I please?
Yeah, because we do have.
I'm looking at the clock. I've been watching the clock.
Conclude, please.
This is one of our most important parts of our job, is the fiduciary part of this.
No disagreements.
Sure.
There are no disagreements.
Can I please finish my comments, because I only had one other point, and then I will be done. I just think without a bigger plan, an idea of where we're headed, we're just going to end up wherever we end up, and I don't like that. I like to have a plan, and that's why it would be good to have that kind of planning. If you would please look on page 123. I'm confused on this one item that I didn't notice, or I would have had it in the staff report. I know we are running out of time. Can I please?
Well, there are some other directors that wanted to speak too.
I understand. Can I just have this one answered? Under property tax, at the top of the page, it says $503,372, and then that's under the actual July to December. But then under the projected at the fiscal year end, it's 154. And then the existing budget says 154. That 503 seems like an anomaly. Do you see where I am, Patrick?
Yeah, I didn't notice that before, so one of them's wrong. I'll have to go back and figure out which one.
Thank you. So I would be okay with approving it as long as that were fixed in the...
Director Barringer?
Okay, I just wanted to say that it's been moved and seconded to approve the amendments of the CCSD budget for 2014-2015, and I just wanted to support Director Rice's desire to do a big picture. I support that, but that's really for the next budget that comes up. So I'm willing to move forward on a call for the vote. Oh, one last thing. We haven't received any money in these grants, is that correct? So the cash hasn't come in. These are all projections. Okay.
That's correct. And we on the big enchilada, the 4.38, we don't anticipate that coming into the beginning of next fiscal year.
Interesting. Okay, thanks.
Yes, and that is an important answer for one of the questions that was asked here this afternoon, because I was planning to ask it too. Okay, then, are we ready for the motion? Director Thompson?
I just want to add that, I have long held that we have a responsibility to, excuse me, not only the county to move forward on the community park, but also to the young people in this community who need places to play soccer and baseball, and to all the adults that are involved in activities that this park is proposed to serve. And I'm really pleased that the Budget Committee made this recommendation in terms of using these funds for that purpose. I want to thank Director Rice for acknowledging the veterans and Veterans Hall, and that reminds me that tonight is fried chicken dinner. And then also the Legion has now instituted for those that don't really go into the heaviness of fried chicken, there's a soup and salad night on Tuesday night that has really been received quite well by the community. All you can eat soup and salad for $6, and good food. So if you're going to be eating tonight, get there early, because fried chicken always sells out.
Well, we thank you for that too. Okay, without further, is there more discussion?
Vice President Clift made the motion, and I seconded it, I believe. So.
Yes, so just so that we are clear, would you like to repeat the motion? And I think we're ready for the vote.
We're ready for it. We're ready for it.
We're ready?
I know we're ready for it. Can I just ask one small question, please, Madam President?
Director Rice.
I appreciate that we are trying to get done so we can get on to the closed session. In the water fund, I'm looking at page 113. We've got $117,731 for the engineering of the Fiscalini tank. Should that all be, since that's carrying us through the entire construction, should that whole amount be here in this budget?
It's not the entire construction. It's just
No, I know it's not the whole, but that company that we just approved that contract, should that full amount for that contract be in this budget?
No, because we don't, and that's a very good question. We don't know that amount yet.
I know we don't know what for the construction, but we know for the contract. That's what this is for, the contract for the engineering, construction management, and quality assurance.
It is, and that reflects in your overall deficit within the water department.
Okay, so even though we're not going to spend it all of this budget.
But you're asking about a rollover into the next fiscal year. Right. That's your question.
Yeah, I just wanted to know whether it was appropriate, that's all.
But it would it will roll over into the next fiscal year.
It'll actually be included in next year's budget, so we'll look and see how much we're going to spend this year, and then when we come back with next year's budget, we'll include the remainder in the following fiscal year. So you're correct. Technically, it's over budgeted, but the fund balance will be increased by the amount we don't spend. It'll be available for next year.
Thank you.
And Vice President Clift.
There is one other thing I want to point out that Patrick didn't point out, page 117. I think this is an outstanding thing. That was something you requested, Director Rice, to have some idea of revenue and projected and expended on all departments. And I think it's your position to produce this monthly. So you'll have this page.
Thank you.
These other pages, you have to request those if you want them, but to have page 117 monthly to give you a income stream, expense stream.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank Patrick. He's the one that did it. With that, I'd call the question.
Okay. Then, all those, let's do a roll call vote to approve the mid-year budget report.
Vice President Clift?
Aye.
Director Berenger?
Aye.
Director Thompson?
Aye.
Director Rice?
Aye.
President Robinette?
Aye. Motion passes. And we have time to carry on to move. When did you say we're going to have a phone conference? Well, we still have one other quick item. Any discussion or recommendations or suggestions on future agenda items? And I'm going to start this one. Actually, Director Rice, you and I were very much on the same wavelength with wanting to have, whatever we call it, defined expenditures or defined use of, whether we call it the reserve, which apparently there's not really that term, but we're talking about cash and investments. And so I would like on a future agenda item that we do appoint, the ad hoc will probably be the one that works on that. However, we do need to have some guidelines. We need some definitions. We need to know that if we take money out of there because we're running short someplace else, what is the plan to pay it back by when? And that just opens up the discussion. There's much more than that.
I believe, Madam President, Tracy gave us the reserve guidelines that were developed by the CSDA a couple of months back in the agenda packet, and then it's just
we have
something
those,
to,
yes.
Yeah.
Any other?
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Any other future agenda items?
I would like to, it being March, for us to address the policy that we have for running the advanced water treatment plant. I think we need to discuss it. We need to say, when are we going to run it? How are we going to run it? What are the keystone? What are the criteria, et cetera? And it requires addressing now, I think. So I'd like to have that as an agenda item. I don't know how you'll come up with a good way to word it, but we would like to be able to have an open discussion on the plant, when to run it.
Yes, I think that is a very important one to bring back in March. See where we are.
I have
anything else?
Couple of things. One, hopefully urgent, one less urgent. Three. First thing I'd like to have brought back once we get to that point, the off-leash policy at the ranch. I'd like at least to find out how all of that went out. I would also like to see us discuss, maybe even as part of discussing the triggers of turning on and off the emergency treatment plant, a trigger for lifting the irrigation ban and the Stage 3 declaration, because we don't have those parameters. It would be nice to have that discussion. Not that we necessarily do it right now, but that we prepare for when that time comes, we know that that's...
I think that's going to wind up to be part of that bigger discussion.
So I just don't want it to fall by the wayside. And policy manual, again, that can be a back burner, but I do think that it's not a bad idea. And no, I'm not trying to find extra days of service to charge the district for, but it would be good to have a committee for a policy manual to put something together, because there's a lot out there that wouldn't take that much effort. And I'd just like to ask you, Madam President, to consider having an information session either conducted by the fire department on fire safety during a high fire season in the drought, or a presentation and information session, informal, but still where it's noticed so the board can all be here, on the emergency water supply. Informational. We need to get information out to the public in a much more regular way, a much more regular time scale than what's currently happening. So those are my requests.
Okay.
I don't know
and
if the rest of the board cares for those ideas or not.
I think that everything we suggest here actually is quite significant and important, but I also know that everything comes in its own time because, it is a constant kind of reevaluating and prioritizing where are we and where do we really need to put our biggest focus for what's coming up. But yes, those are also, all of the suggestions you make are good.
Madam President, my suggestion too is
As a
if
board.
and when we do have the fire talk, if you will, since any kind of fire other than a fire outside the boundaries, which would be the forest, would really be CAL FIREs. They would be the ones fighting it. So I think it's a good idea to have it. But I think we should also have CAL FIRE here to explain to the community what their resources are, because our fire department will not be fighting that fire. Our fire department can talk about it, but with 3 people on a rig, if there is a fire of any kind of any magnitude, it will be, so I think maybe a combined meeting with CAL FIRE and our fire department to really talk about the resources that would be available to not necessarily shed a doom and gloom on the situation, but to reassure the residents that CAL FIRE has unlimited resources. And really, we would lose incident command rather fast. We would lose incident command actually. Once it got to a second or third structure, even, we'd lose incident command. So I think it's important that if and when we do have that, we would bring the fire department or the fire jurisdiction that would really be responsible for that and to talk about it in addition to our fire department.
What I would like to do on that is this. I think we do have the dry season around the corner now. I think it's an extremely critical kind of workshop opportunity for this community. So I would like to suggest that we set it up apart from a meeting like this with CAL FIRE and our fire department, but I hear what you're saying, that really it will be out of our hands very quickly. I would like to do it for several reasons. Number one, so that everyone in this community really has at least the opportunity to know if the worst should happen, which we hope will never happen, that there are some key steps that here's the first thing you've got to do, here's the next thing you've got to do, just to stay safe. And I think it would be a workshop that's specifically for one topic. I'd like to see it videotaped and on the website for people that can't be here or people that kind of forget, because, we sometimes have great emergency training. I've had it before in many areas. And then it's a use it or lose it. And so then after a while I kind of think, now what am I supposed to do first? So I would like to have the whole thing videotaped so that people could go back. I think it's a very important thing considering this, what appears to be the continuing drought, the dry season coming up, and it should be a one-topic focus. And Director Rice?
Thank you. I appreciate that. That would be very nice to have something like that. I think the community would appreciate it.
Timely. I think we're right on it by now, and it'd be good timing. Thank you. With no further business, then this meeting is adjourned, and we are going to move on to closed session now. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes.